Cllr Christie, who's being substituted by Cllr Ben Butler. Everyone else is here, so I'm assuming no more apologies. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest on the items on tonight's agenda from the members? Not that I can see, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, there was an issue with these. A new version of the minutes has been circulated. You should all have them before you, which I hope has rectified the issues raised. So can they be agreed as a true record of the last meeting we had? Great, thank you very much. Now, the applications. We have 5 on the agenda, numbered 5 to 9. We take them not always in that order. We take them in order of where there are speakers in the room first, or where the ones we expect to be longer first. So the order is going to be items 8, then 9, then 7, then 5, and then item 6, for which we have no speakers. So that's obviously going last. I'll explain some of the rest for members of the public and others who may not have attended or watched the planning committee before. I'll go through the details of that to help you once we get started. But we're going to start on item number 8, which is in St George's House in the centre of Wimbledon. We're going to do this a little bit differently from what we normally would, in that I have been advised by Councillor McGrath, that he wishes to move for some procedural issues about notification of local residents, etc. He wishes to move that the item be deferred until the next meeting. And what I don't want to do is spend an hour discussing it with all the speeches for and against, and then decide we're going to defer it. So I'm going to take the question of whether we defer it to the next meeting at the start. And if we decide to take it tonight, we'll move into all the other speeches as usual. So first on this, this brief discussion at the start is not going to be about the details of the application. It's going to be about the process of how neighbours and others were informed and letters coming in and back, that kind of process issue. So we can make the decision about whether everything has been done so that we can fairly decide on this application this evening or not. So first, I'm going to invite Officer Tim Lipscomb to explain about the planning department's actions in the lead up to this application coming before us. Tim, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just clarify, Tim Bryson, just for the YouTube. Chair, yes, with this item, I noted the email correspondence today from Councillor McGrath regarding the letters that were issued to residents notifying them of the committee of the application. So the process is, when the agenda is produced, the committee letters are sent out by our admin team, and they are sent to anyone that has commented on the application up to that time. What has happened is, since those letters were produced along with the agenda, we've had a high number of representations received, which are considered late representations. The admin team, what we've done is they decided to send out new letters to them out of courtesy to let them know about the meeting that was on tonight. So there's been no breach of procedure. Those letters are purely sent to notify the additional late representations coming of the people that the application is being heard this evening. So procedurally, from our point of view, we're happy that it can be looked at this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to invite Councillor McGrath to outline his reasons for wanting to defer, and then I'll open it to the rest of the committee if they want to comment further. But Councillor McGrath first.
Thank you, Chair. And the reason I'm asking for this to be deferred, is a very simple one, that we should follow the procedures that we've set down. And while it's certainly true that late people who responded late, there's obviously been a lot of interest in this, did get a letter. The letter they got is very clear, and it went out on the 8th of February, and it says, it tells people how to register to speak. It tells them that if they want to speak, there's a process, and they have to register by 12 o'clock on the day before the meeting. So people were receiving letters on the 9th, and you know how the problems we've got with post anyway in Wimbledon, that you're lucky to get a letter the next day. Anyway, some people did get the letter the next day, and they were, some people won't have got got them at all, and they were receiving letters telling them to respond to something by 12 o'clock when they, that was already passed. So it's really quite simple that we shouldn't send out letters telling people that if they want to speak at this committee, they have to do it by a certain time, when in many cases there was no possibility of them making that time. So it's quite simple, Mr. Chair, that we should follow the things that we've said we will do. If we send out a letter saying you can do something, we should stick to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the committee want to comment, not on the details of the application yet, but on the deferral or not? Southgate and then Alan Bretus. Councillor Southgate, Peter.
A question, Chair, if I may. Those who will be speaking this evening, did they make their applications to do so before this, before the late letters went out in response to the late representations?
I'm going to assume that was the case.
Say, Chair, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question specifically, whether they were ones that were sent letters in the first round rather than the second round during this week.
Okay. Councillor Alan Bretus.
Thank you, Chair. The officers have advised us accordingly. We should go with officers' recommendation that all the procedures have been in place. This is a business-like council. We're all here to look at this planning application, and we should proceed accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath has proposed deferring. I haven't had from the committee a seconder for that proposal yet. I have one, Councillor Dean. So that is a proposal in front of the committee. If nobody else wishes to speak, I'm going to take that straight to the vote. Councillor Crowe. Go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say that I've received quite a lot of email correspondence, and latterly today, some quite angry emails about this particular letter. So I do think we have a kind of question of reputation of the council. This letter kind of damages our reputation in that it's not actionable, and therefore I think we have to take some kind of remedial action, and the only remedial action we can possibly take in these circumstances is to defer tonight's decision. Thank you.
I remind councillors before we move to the vote that the next meeting is on March 17th, 5 weeks tonight, which if we did decide to defer would be the meeting that this application would go to. But if I'm seeing no other members wanting to speak on this, I'm going to put this proposal from Councillor McGrath to the vote, which is the proposal is to defer this matter to the next meeting. Can I see all those in favour of that? I'm seeing 3. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is not passed, and we will decide, we will discuss and then decide this matter this evening at this meeting. Okay, so the process for this and all the applications we'll see before us is that first, the officer responsible gives a rundown of the details of the plan in front of us. Then we move to, in this case, 2 objectors who have 3 minutes each. Then the applicant, who gets the sum total of the 2 objectors, so they get 6 minutes to speak. Then in this case, there is 1 contribution from councillors who are not members of the committee who want to speak on items in their ward. Then the officer will come back on any points raised in those contributions from across the chamber and some people on Zoom. After that, we move into the part of the meeting which is only for members of the committee to speak. First, we have questions from members of the committee to the officers on points of clarification on the report and the details of the application. Then we go into a debate among the councillors on the committee about the application, and then finally we'll move to a vote on to whether accept or not the officer's recommendation. On speakers, anyone joining by Zoom and anybody in the chamber should be able to see a timer up on the screen showing how much time you have left. Obviously 3 minutes for most, 6 minutes for some of those applicants responding to 2 speeches. Also, there's a light here which will be green at first. It will turn amber when you have 1 minute to go. Obviously, if your time runs out and you're just finishing up a sentence, I'll let you finish, but I'm not going to let people go, 20 seconds, 30 seconds on. So I'd ask people to come to their conclusions at the end of their allotted time. So we move into agenda item 8, which is St George's House in the centre of Wimbledon. And I invite Tim Bryson, we have two Tims in the planning department, I got them mixed up before, but Tim Bryson to present his report.
Thank you, Chair. Just going to share screen. Okay. Members, so the application site is at St George's House East, which is currently an office building with ground floor retail units which front Wimbledon Hill. It is right in the town centre of Wimbledon. It is opposite the station, and it is also north of some commercial buildings to the south and southeast, and to the northwest some further commercial buildings as well. This is the existing footprint of the existing building, kind of a U-shaped at the moment with a service yard in the centre, an existing basement at present. At ground floor level, so the office building entrances on St George's Road, and the retail units front Wimbledon Hill Road. Just running through some floor plans quickly of the existing office building, as outlined, kind of U-shaped at the moment, and the fourth upper floor there. This is just showing the existing outline of the existing building. It is a red brick building with mirrored windows at the moment. Some useful Google 3D views of the building here from the front and then from the rear. It's built within the 80s as part of a wider off-lit complex with the buildings to the south. The proposal itself is for full redevelopment of the site to provide a new mixed-use building with first floor to the 11th floor as offices, new ground floor retail units which would front Wimbledon Hill Road and also would front the footpath to the southeast. Access to the office building would be off St George's Road to the west, with a large cycle hub located at the rear. The proposal also includes linking the existing public footpath through to St George's Road for public use. The basement plan, so servicing and access would remain the same off St George's Road with the existing road layout. Ground floor again. Two of the retail units, due to the sloping ground levels, would benefit from a mezzanine fitted within. And then, as outlined previously, the first floor to 11th floor is office space, so all open plan with the facilities and lifts, etc., within the middle in the central core. So just running through the floor plans themselves. As we go up to the 6th, 7th floor of the building, small little terrace proposed there, and then we get back to the wider, larger terrace. So essentially, the building is almost in two forms, with a lower and upper. So the terrace fronting Wimbledon Hill Road and also round to St George's, and then further office space above. Leading to the plant at the top, and also a further outdoor space for the users of the office building at the top. Turning to elevations, so the proposed building, as outlined previously, is in sort of almost two parts. So the first part here and the second part at above set back. The new retail units would have large tall-to-ceiling glazing throughout. And as you can see, the design of the building uses sort of a fins design coming down. Looking at the west elevation, so in front here is Wimbledon Hill Road, and so you can see the setback above this floor here. And looking the other way, so this at ground floor level would open up the retail unit visually onto the public footpath to the east. There is an overhang proposed as a feature throughout the building. some context elevations for members in addition to the existing built form, and some section drawings. This is an extract from the future Wimbledon supplementary planning document, which has been adopted by the council, really just providing the building height criteria for some of the buildings within the town centre and where taller buildings are geared towards, in particular identifying specific sites. This particular site, for example, is here opposite Wimbledon Station. Wimbledon Station here. As part of the application, the applicant submitted some visual aids with before and after. So this is on Wimbledon Hill Road, looking across, and so after, so you can see the building in the distance. This is in front of the former town hall. To the east, looking west, again before and after. St George's Road itself, before and after there. Some more prominent views, so from the crossroads, from the northeast, looking across. Members should be noted that as part of the proposal, it includes widening the public footways around the outside of the building. So there would be a gain of 1 metre on Wimbledon Hill Road itself, and it's currently staggered at the moment. This would run a clean line through on St George's Road, widening the footpath again for public users. And then views from the station opposite. And really just some close-up detailing of the scheme. Some site pictures in present day. So again, from the front. So currently it's red brick with rather tinted glass. And then from the opposite on the corner junction there. This is from St George's Road. So on the east there, that is the building not subject of this application, but it's the one in front. The access road off St George's Road coming in. And really just showing the line of trees and some bike parking here as of today. And then the public footpath this side of the building. So this would be wider here with the removal of this to help benefit sweeping people through and views through. Chair, if I direct members' attention to the modification sheet, we all note we've had a number of extra representations and summary thereof. Overall, officers consider this to be a good development. It is a good site for the town centre, a prominent site, and overall officers consider it to be an appropriate design and scale and massing for the site and the local surroundings, and therefore recommend permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Okay, as I explained earlier, we now go into the representations from the public. On this one, I have, in the order I have them on my sheet, Beverly Barton, then Sarah Sharp for 3 minutes each, and then it will be the applicant who will have 6 minutes. So, Beverly Barton, are you in the room or on Zoom? You're here. I'm here. I think your microphone will be switched on for you.
Right, I think it is now.
It is on now, yes. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes, and this will turn amber when you've got a minute to go.
This is a pivotal application. The design review panel has identified the site as probably the most prominent in the town centre, with exceptional design and architecture essential. These are key reasons the application should be refused. Building height. In master plan meetings, significantly increased building height was the key concern voiced by many. High-rise blocks are domineering, steal the sunlight, and risk completely changing the scale and character of the town, reducing amenity. Here, approval is recommended for a building exceeding SBD recommendations. This is considered acceptable as it's not excessive, only exceeding the maximum by 2.48 metres, and the SBD simply provides guidance on height. So there's a degree of flexibility with other factors, including contributions to public realm, also important. Merton has neighbourhoods blighted by tower blocks. Including plant, this building is up to 54.9 metres high. Britannia Point in Collier's Wood is 54.26 metres. Merton Civic Centre, which we're sitting in now, is 45 metres. Designer materials. A landmark building dominating the town needs to work contextually with heritage Portland stone and limestone buildings. The proposal is for glass reinforced concrete plus glazing. The GLA is said to have concluded that there would be less than substantial harm to the conservation areas and heritage assets, which is hardly reassuring, but public benefits and public realm improvements would outweigh the harm. The design review panel has voiced concern over environmental factors not sufficiently or successfully addressed, notably that the station square, our main open space, will be in significant shadow much of the day, most of the year. The applicant submits that BRE suggested target values will be exceeded with 2 hours sunlight over 88.8% of the area rather than the required 50%. That, though, is not a target, a minimum. Is this really an improvement? Focus on office space. The development proposes 11 stories of expensive office space. Merton's focus on office space seems counterintuitive. The pandemic has increased the trend to home working. Is there cogent evidence that this is feasible long term? Sustainability. The SPD supports sustainability. The design review panel has voiced scepticism that a 1980s office building could not be retained and repurposed for the 2020s, stating a far stronger argument was needed here, weighing options for retention versus demolition. Why is that no longer a concern? Consultation. Many residents and Stephen Hammond, the local MP, only learned of the proposals this week. There has now been a significant, mainly negative response. The application should be refused as completely out of scale for the site, not compliant with the council's own SPD and not achieving the essential excellent design and architecture. Alternatively, any decision should be deferred until outstanding issues flagged at panel.
Time.
Right.
But thank you for that. Sarah Sharp, can't see you in the room. Are you with us on Zoom? Don't seem to have.
No, Sarah is dialing in.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
We have her. There she is. Sarah, you should be able to see your time on the screen, and you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
The truth is, it is a massive development and sustainability question marks with sustainability question marks all over it. Two, it sits in a critical and very visual location opposite Wimbledon Station, which is still thriving with businesses and heavy footfall. It drowns existing buildings, protrudes with its incongruous glass and metal mass from every angle and blocks off skylines in several directions. It plunges the station and forecourt area, the town's main gateway, into shade for much of the day, most of the year. Those are the DRP's words, not mine. Why would people come or indeed linger in a dull, dark town? No one big development should cause such harm to the town's existing fabric and paying businesses. It must be rejected. We need the area to be more attractive, not give businesses reasons to leave or for footfall to head out of the town centre to Kingston or up the hill to the village for character, sky and space. It doesn't matter how many outdoor coffee shops or public spaces you create. If it's dark, dull and cold, people don't stay. On height, Merton agreed the future Wimbledon SPD, and which you, councillors, agreed. Now the applicant is forging his own height because it resembles nothing that you approved. The building is within the applicant claims the building is within the limits of 12 stories, with the first section at 7. But for this site, the SPD painstakingly prepared by Merton Council states that an overall 8 to 11 story building height would be acceptable given the neighbouring context of the station and other surrounding buildings. That's the same SPD that you all approved. The council will tell you the building has setbacks and the height's acceptable. The setbacks don't mitigate the height. Look at the CGIs. The height is so excessive at 55 that the civic centre plus 3 extra stories without any space around it. I've seen manipulation of policies, but not like this. The CS14 says all development needs to be designed in order to respect, reinforce and enhance the local character of the area which it is located in. But this
1 minute remaining.
It's a sterile, run-of-the-mill glass monolith with no distinctive features that won't last the test of time. The DRP twice said the applicant clearly refuses to see the building in its immediate context or to accept it that it forms part of a wider townscape. It is about jobs, but the reality is this: the building is speculative with no pre-let tenants for 28,000 square meters. Wimbledon Town Centre alone right now has 20,000 square meters of available rentable empty office space. Do we need huge office blocks when we're at an age of hybrid working? Croydon planned big and crashed. So let's learn from that and make sure Wimbledon, the beating business heart of Wimbledon, of Merton, has the architecture to lead the borough's post-pandemic recovery. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. My notes have on my speaker list that Joel Hawkins will share the time with Joel Hawkins. I'm assuming that's a typo and there are two different people. And are they in the room or on Zoom? It's only you. Okay. You will have the entire 6 minutes then as the sum of the two objectors. So if you need to use all that time, again, it should appear on the screen and you'll be notified when there's a minute to go. So Joel, go ahead.
Chair and councillors. It's not on. Okay. Good evening, Chair and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to address you in support of your officer's recommendation of approval. The site is allocated in your future Wimbledon plan as a key component of the wider St George's Quarter regeneration. The application before you tonight will help Merton Council fulfil its vision for this core commercial area in Wimbledon Town Centre. The proposed design retains and reuses the basement and foundation structures. Above ground, the existing building is inefficient, no longer able to provide grade A office space, and cannot be adapted to support a larger building of high quality in line with the future Wimbledon plan. Redevelopment enables the design flexibility for a fabric-first energy strategy, which will reduce operational energy demand and achieve zero operational emissions by 2030. The scheme delivers significantly higher biodiversity than currently exists on site. The landscape design incorporates features that will provide for wildlife to forage, nest, and roost. This provision amounts to a biodiversity net gain score of just under 200%. Redevelopment also allows for important public realm improvements. We will significantly widen the East Walk public footpath to address the current antisocial and unpleasant environment and create a new pedestrian link through to St George's Road. The pavement of Wimbledon Bridge Road is also widened. The development will create well in excess of 1,000 new full-time jobs, with additional employment created during construction. We will be providing affordable workspace, ideal for small businesses and startups. The new jobs will bring additional footfall to the area, boosting the local economy. As well as the excellent public transport links, we are providing 340 cycle spaces, encouraging healthy and sustainable travel to work. This scheme has been to your design review panel twice, and on the second occasion, they unanimously described the building as well-designed, sculptural, and generally impressive. In response to DRP feedback, we made a number of significant changes to the design, including lowering the overall height and improving sustainability. Your officers and the GLA support the design and height of this 11-storey building in line with the SPD. In addition, the impact upon the nearest residential properties and station forecourt satisfies the daylight policy tests. We are pleased with the local positive response. We have 70 letters of support from nearby residents and businesses, including Love Wimbledon. The demand for high quality office space in Wimbledon town centre is clear. Even with the impact of COVID, new lettings have been agreed and record rents achieved. With sustainability and well-being at the heart of our design, we are responding to the priority requirements of the modern office occupier. Indeed, a scheme of this size and quality is essential to maintain and grow the attractiveness of the office sector in Wimbledon. Merton Council recognises how important office workers are to the prosperity and vitality of Wimbledon and the crucial role this development will play in anchoring the St George's Quarter regeneration. We share that view and hope you will agree with your officer's recommendation and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Finally, for the contributions, we have Councillor Holden of the ward which covers the site, who will have 3 minutes to speak. Daniel.
Thank you, Chair and dear committee members. I'm here tonight to oppose this application for an almost 55-metre tall building across the road from Wimbledon Station. I am echoing and supporting the local residents, resident associations and civic societies, all whom oppose this application. I think you should refuse permission because this application is by quite some margin much taller than any other building in Wimbledon. The neighbouring buildings at St George House West and Ely's department store amount to no more than a standard 7- and 5-storey building, respectively. The proposal here states 12 stories, but we have to ask how tall is a storey? The council's own approved Wimbledon Town Centre SPD that was approved in November 2020 sets the limits here at 32 metres and 48 metres for the Part 8 and Part 12 stories. Now, that in itself is excessive for the character, rhythm and scale of Wimbledon Town Centre. However, this proposal goes up to 54.9 metres at its peak. By way of comparison, as you've already heard, this is taller than the Civic Centre in which we're sitting right now and similar to the Britannia Point Tower in Collier's Wood. There are also public amenity problems with this application. Due to its siting immediately to the south of Wimbledon Station's entrance square, it will cast a long shadow for most of the year over this central part of Wimbledon and will present an overbearing feel and presence to the town. There are also issues with the design. As mentioned, the design review panel looked at it twice and gave 2 amber verdicts. Its large glass paneling approach is akin to something you'd see in central London, whereas the design vernacular in Wimbledon is either Art Deco, red brick terracotta, or Portland stone, as you can see at the Old Town Hall in Wimbledon. This application is far inferior, using mostly glass and glass reinforced concrete. Climate change considerations. It is increasingly required to renovate and make good existing buildings with minimal material changes, especially buildings which are not that old, such as this 1980s.
He didn't get his full 3 minutes, Chair. It started on the old timer. That's what I let the lady know about. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Okay, so basically this application should be more like the Wellington House on Wimbledon Hill Road, which was sympathetic renovation of an old building. I urge the committee to refuse permission by reason of DMD1, excessive bulk, disproportionate impact on the rhythm, scale, height and massing of the surrounding townscape, CS14, which is design grounds, and the London Plan Policy D9, which building heights in excess of council approved plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now we'll go back to Tim Bryson. If there's anything that has been raised in those 4 contributions which you specifically want to come back on.
Thank you, Chair. A number of issues raised in the speeches this evening. With regards to scale, character, height of the overall development, that is a matter of judgment on the application. We do have the Future Wimbledon SPD, which has been adopted by the council, which does provide guidance on height, on how the town centre could be developed in the future moving forward. It does direct, as you can see on the map in my presentation, development increase in height envisaged towards the central parts of the town centre of Wimbledon. Most of it in St George's Road, where this site sits on the northern end of, The reason being, this is the larger office development district of the town centre, and with economic growth, it is envisaged some height would be acceptable. It does go marginally beyond the guidance in the height, but overall, in the assessment, we consider, given a good design, this scheme can be supported. It does include a large setback, which we does consider to help mitigate that overbearing aspect on the road and the forecourt opposite. With regards to some affordable office space was mentioned, this is part of the scheme, and half of the first floor level of the building would be given over to affordable office space, which is to be controlled via the legal agreement. There are wider public benefits to the proposal, with the widening of the footways and pavements all the way around the building, also including a new link across the back of the building, so that people can utilise this too. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now we move to that part of this agenda where it is now only officers responding to questions who can speak from now on. So I'll go to questions. I'm seeing Councillor Dean, Southgate, Draper. Okay, ready. Dean, Southgate, Draper, Allambritis, Butler, in that order.
So Councillor
Dean, David.
Can the officers just confirm that this building will be taller than Botanic Point in Colliers Wood and be taller than the Civic Centre? And also, I've heard the word significantly widening a path. Can you tell me what that width is?
I think the first two questions have been covered, but we may as well go over them again. And I think I can answer. Councillor Dean, when you're invited to speak, you may. We'll go over again. Yes, from what we've seen already, it is taller than Britannia Point and it is taller than the Civic Centre. And from what I remember, but officers will confirm, the footpath on at least two sides of the building is to be widened by at least 1 metre. Can you confirm that, Tim?
Chair, thank you. With regards to Britannia Point in Colliers Wood, I presume that's the Brown and Root Tower. Yeah. Is that correct? Yeah. That is 60 metres in measurement on plan. 60. You mentioned the Civic Centre building. I don't have that figure to hand, unfortunately, in terms of that building height. And Chair, with regards to widening a footpath, I know that on Wimbledon Hill Road, that is being the building's been brought back, so it is 1 metre gained along Wimbledon Hill Road for public use. I don't know if David has got the figures for St George's Road in terms of the widening on that road at all.
Well, I've got the figures for the East Walk Path. So at the moment, it's between 1.9 and 2.2 metres wide. So that's going to be widened to 4.1 and 5.5 metres wide. So then at the moment, there's blind corners along that East Walk Path. So there's a public safety issue. By widening that path, you'll have a straight line of sight along there. So that should resolve that issue.
Okay.
I was just going to say quickly on St George's, just give me 1 second. I think it's been widened to 6.8 metres off memory. I have to look through my notes.
Is there an issue with the paths at the moment? Is there lots of people struggling to get past each other on the paths down the side of by the White Car Park? Is there a problem with congestion along there?
In terms of congestion, probably not, because it's not high footfall down there. But in terms of perception of public safety and antisocial behaviour,
has there been any?
In terms of footfall, obviously there's not high footfall along that path. It's high footfalls along along Wimbledon Hill Road, but there is a public safety issue. There's a lot of loitering, so there's issues with that, and there's obviously a perception of public safety issues there. So by widening that path, creating a clear line of sight along that path, that should resolve.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take 2 at a time for the next. We've got 4 more questions, so I'll go Councillor Southgate and then Draper come for responses and then go to the next 2. So, sorry, first Councillor Southgate, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the SPD was adopted in November 2020 at the council meeting. So we were 6 months into the pandemic, COVID-19, as we used to call it then. But I'm assuming the SPD had been substantially drafted well before that November date when it was adopted. Does it say anything at all? Does it anticipate changing patterns of work, working from home, the extent to which that will now become the norm in assessing the need for office space in Wimbledon?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Draper. Nick.
Cheers. Yeah, before I start, I just tell Councillor Dean that yes, it does get congested. I use that pathway quite a lot, and I do get stuck behind people quite regularly. My question, though, is there was a mention of 1,000 full-time jobs. Do we know those full-time jobs are going to happen, or is that just pure speculation?
Okay, thank you. Officers.
I'll quickly answer that. It's an estimate, but it's a conservative estimate.
And Councillor Southgate. Sorry, Councillor Southgate's point on whether the SPD took into account the perceived working pattern changes due to COVID.
Councillor Southgate, we don't believe so, because it has been drafting for a while throughout that that year and earlier on. So no is the answer.
Okay, thank you for that. Two more questioners in this order, Councillors Allambritis and then Butler. So first, Councillor Allambritis, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Can the officers confirm that a lot of the objectors, and I've seen all the correspondence, were querying the position of Crossrail 2. Has the developer consulted with Crossrail 2? Is it coterminous, and will Crossrail 2 be able to go ahead once this building is up and running?
Thank you for that. And Councillor Butler. Ben.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two quick questions. Just a clarification on the path at the side there. Are there any considerations on the proposed overhang and how that will affect the path compared to it now being without overhang, even though it's got an awkward jilt in there? And can you clarify the proposed number of retail spaces on the ground compared to now in terms of units, or does it not go into that detail?
Okay, we have responses to those?
In terms of the overhang, there's going to be a bigger overhang at the moment because we're pushing back the ground floor to create the extra public realm. They have done wind microclimate studies which show that there will be slightly more wind impacts on the southwest side of the building, which is where the new public path is going to be created between St George's Road and the existing public path. Whereas on the Wimbledon Hill road frontage, the conclusion of that report was that it's going to be acceptable still, and still provide comfortable levels or comfortability for pedestrians and people sitting out using seats and chairs on that pavement. What was the other question?
Councillor Allambritis had the question about Crossrail. Oh yes, and how large compared to the existing? How large or how many units of retail space?
At the moment, this is a ground floor retail, and what's proposed is ground floor plus a mezzanine floor of retail. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how many units there are. I think three units, which is
floor retail space. Is that right?
Yeah, this is 3 units with mezzanine floors in the proposed. I don't know what is there currently. I believe it's just
a ground floor at the moment. So what's proposed is a ground floor plus mezzanine.
Okay, and Councillor Allambritis' point about Crossrail.
Yeah, Crossrail 2 were consulted, so they've raised no objections on it.
Okay, thank you for that. One further question, 3 more questions. I'll take all 3 and then go back to the officers, Dean, Crow, and I'm sorry, McGrath, in that order. Councillor Dean, David.
So it's about the foraging wildlife. I'm just keen to understand which part of the building is offering this potential foraging. And also, it talks about zero operating emissions, but not for 9 years. So what will happen between when the building opens 32 months after it starts being built and 2030? Why isn't that zero emissions? Why can't they be zero emissions when it first opens?
Okay, Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Chair. My question concerns the design review panel. I note that it went to the design review panel twice. On both occasions was an amber. On the second occasion, the design review panel said there were two key problems: overshadowing of the station square and an underdeveloped sustainability strategy. Can you please tell me what has been done to address those 2 points?
Okay, and we will come to that after Councillor McGrath-Simon has his question.
I've got a couple of questions. Thank you, Chair. The first one is on heights, and I wonder if I could just check my understanding of the heights. That in the document which was approved by the full council, it's got an upper limit indicative height of 48 metres. And the height, the highest point of this building, I believe, is 54.9 metres. So I wonder if you could just confirm those two figures. The second one is about jobs. And it talks about creation on page 185 of 1,225 net additional jobs. Is that jobs that have moved from one place to another? So if we moved all the jobs from this building into the new building, would that count as additional jobs in Wimbledon? Or is that because there's more economic activity? So could you clarify that, please? And thirdly, I don't understand the point about support for startups and small businesses. It does say in the document that there be a 10% discount on the rents for startups and small businesses, but in the planning conditions, and this may be in the supplementary document, it's just occurred to me, it doesn't. It just says on page 209, I think, it just says in condition 32, it just says affordable. It just says something about affordable rents. It doesn't actually give any detail. I wonder if you could just clarify why it doesn't give any detail on that condition. Thank you.
Okay, I'll give the officers for that. I'll leave to see what the officers say on those. All, did you note down the various questions?
Just I'll kind of start with you. So with regards to the building height, yeah, the future Wimbledon master plan has given an indicative height of 48 metres for a 12-storey building. Just like to highlight it is a guidance, so there is some flexibility there. We're taking this building is going to be to roof level, just over 50 metres of parapet. We'd just like to point out that there is plant on top, which takes the overall height to just over 54 metres. But I'd just like to point out that that plant is set well back from the building's edges. So you're not going to see that from short range and medium views. You're going to just see the top of the top floor. What else? Sorry, was the
1225 net job.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's really a planning consideration. I mean, my understanding is that the estimate that if the building is filled, 1,200 or so, 1,000 to 1,200 new jobs will, net new jobs will be in that building. Whether that comes from other parts of Merton or other parts of London or even other parts of Wimbledon town centre, it's not for us. Yes, my understanding would be that that is a condition that there will be a legal contract between the council and the developer to firm that up.
I mean, the condition, we've just given the header for the condition at the moment. We haven't made a final decision on whether we would secure that by legal agreement or via condition. So that's something which we'll discuss.
Supplementary, Chair, are we able to change that figure of 10%? Could we say that we would approve it subject to a higher figure if we wanted, or is that something that we can't alter?
I think we could, if the committee was minded to, we could probably advise officers of that. This is obviously tonight isn't the final decision on this, because those kind of details of contracts and things are to be worked out. And also, I should remind everybody that because of the size of the development, if we were to give permission tonight, it's referred automatically to the mayor's office. So there are further, this isn't, tonight isn't the final detail on every condition. And very, very often we do, in principle, say yes or no to something and then leave officers to deal with specific conditions. The other questions that were raised, Councillor Dean mentioned the wildlife and the energy efficiency and net zero targets, and Councillor Crowe mentioned the overlooking onto the square in front of the railway station and the shade to that area.
In terms of the urban greening, so the London plan requires an urban greening score of 0.3, so this achieves a 0.33. The GLA, since they sent their stage 1 response, have confirmed that they're happy with the urban greening and the biodiversity part of the scheme. In terms of biodiversity, there's going to be a new tree planted at the junction of the building and the East Walk Path, and there's going to be several further trees planted along St George's Road. 2 trees will be removed on on Wimbledon Hill Roads, but they will also be replaced by two further trees. And I think there's going to be further greenery provided at Terrace on the roof terrace as well, to further improve biodiversity. So what was the last? In terms of energy efficiency, I haven't got the expertise to actually answer that question, but we have consulted our climate change officer, and she's confirmed that she's happy with the details submitted so far. And this will also go back to the GLA through stage 2 to confirm that they're also happy with the information the applicant submitted since their stage 1 response.
Finally, it was about the area in front of the station being in shade due to the new building.
The applicant submitted a daylight sunlight overshadowing report, and that confirms that it complies with BRE guidance.
Okay, I'll take one final question, Councillor Crowe.
Sorry, it's really kind of a supplementary question. My question really was, the design review panel said it was unsatisfactory. Has anything changed since the design review panel said that in relation to overshadowing?
Right, yeah, so they have made a number of amendments since the DRP made their second response. And they've also provided further reports to just confirm or address any concerns which the design review panel said. Let me just find my, sorry. In terms of the sustainability, so they have reduced the amount of glass that was on the elevations. That was a concern that the DRP had, and that will also improve the energy performance of the building, reducing solar gain and heat loss. I'd just like to point out the DRP did say that the building was well designed and generally impressive. So, and I know one of the objections, and a lot of the objections were to deal with the amount of glazing. But I'd like to point out one of the main facade materials is the GRC, which is kind of stone-like material, and that's designed to replicate the more important buildings in the town centre, such as the train station and the Grade 2 listed town hall. Well, sorry, was there anything?
No, I think that's cleared that up, yeah. So that's the end of questions. We'll now ask for any comments on the debate from members. I'm going to make a list. Alan Breaches, Dean, Draper, Crowe. Is that all I've seen so far? Okay, so first, Councillor Alan Breaches, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. So I, for one, should be voting for this application and urge my colleagues on the Planning Application Committee to do so for the following reasons. This fits in with the Wimbledon Town Centre Master Plan, and we've all worked on that. That's been consulted on. just so that people are aware that Francis Grove, with planning permission, goes to 12 floors. So there is precedent here. This is a building in front of Wimbledon train station, the only train station in London with rail, tube, tram. The only station in London with rail, tube, tram. This is a business centre with huge connectivity and very attractive to people to come into work, to provide that footfall that Wimbledon needs. Of course, Wimbledon relies on its residents to shop and to eat in Wimbledon, but it also hugely relies on office staff. We need buildings like these to attract headquarter organizations into this borough. 1,000 new full-time jobs. Okay, maybe a conservative estimate. If that was 500, 750, 800, I would still be very, very happy with that. Don't forget the 340 cycle spaces. This has the support of the GLA in our officers, all versed, all qualified, all working on this for a number of months. And also, let's not forget, this isn't the end of the story. We need to be businesslike. We need to approve applications like this. We need to be daring. We need to move forward. And I'm very concerned by talk that there is no more demand for office space. Bloomberg, who are versed in these matters, say that London's landlords say the greatest demand is for green buildings. And can I thank the Wimbledon Society for their letter, which referred to and brought to my attention, and I know they in the main object, but they say it is welcome to see that it is proposed to be an all-electric building aiming to be zero carbon by 2030, based on LETI guidelines. And the LETI guidelines I have here, which are drawn up by 1,000 experts from throughout the climate change world. And colleagues, we need to be cognizant of that. There are all-electric buildings and houses in Wimbledon, but not of this size, and we need to be brave and go with that. And there is a letter of support here, and the developers talked about other letters, and this letter of support says the following: to me, the new building is stylish and will add footfall, bringing prosperity to the town centre. We need prosperity post-pandemic. Please vote for this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lambritis. Councillor Draper, next. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is a genuinely exciting building, and by 21st century standards is extremely attractive, quite honestly. And as we've heard, it is very, very efficient. It's got some exciting points like there. But it's big, it's very big, and objectives have pointed to Croydonization. But it's not just Croydonization, it's Suttonization and Kingstonization and Wandsworthization. In fact, what it is basically is just keeping up with the competition. My question, it goes back to what the question I asked earlier, is it needed? And this is where I move from definites to hopefulness, because I'm very conscious that a lot of our town was built in the 19th century by effectively vanity project speculation. And you know, those buildings, although they look very, very nice, and many of them still do, they're not efficient anymore. They aren't fit for purpose. And in fact, really, if we went back in the TARDIS a couple of hundred years, we certainly wouldn't have built them. Now, I'm actually hoping that what we've got here isn't what we were doing in the 19th century. Hopefully it's what we're going to be doing in the 21st century, and it's going to actually fill with happy workers. And so I'm going for those 1,000 jobs, and I'm going to vote for this, and I'm saying don't let us down, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dean, David.
Well, for the first time tonight, you're going to hear something about planning guidelines rather than rhetoric. You're going to hear about the quasi-legal meeting that you have in front of you, rather than people having these ambitions for the future. As far as I know, I mean, this is the first building, I'm now old enough, this is the first building I've seen demolished in Wimbledon that I remember before it was there. It's not that old, it's 30 years old. And I even remember what people were talking about at the time. It was a modern building. I'm not as old that I wasn't born in the 19th century. This is the 1980s. This was built just before Centre Court in 1992. I am a councillor in the town centre. And one of the things I do is I speak to all the businesses. And this is one of the only buildings that is always full. The people are always happy. There are no issues with Wi-Fi, broadband, lighting, parking, any issues at all. And two things that come to mind with regard to this council. There's a special supplementary planning guidance, which when I read the opening words of that, it seemed to have been written by Councillor Stephen Allen-Brittis, as you've heard tonight. There was his face, there was his signature, and there were his words. And in that guidance, this building wasn't going to be this big, and it wasn't going to be this ugly. It wasn't going to take shadow across onto the station square. And basically, what we were hoping for is not what we've got. Now, Councillor Allen-Brittis only presented that about 6 to 12 months ago, but he seems to have forgotten what he wrote, because we were expecting a Wimbledon that could present a world-class architectural merit buildings. And we have a load of glass, which even the design review panel are essentially architects who love new buildings. Not even the design review panel could like this. And I've heard some out of context sentences about the DRP, but they have a system which is red, amber, and green. And the reason it went twice is because the first time it wasn't accepted, but the second time it wasn't accepted either. So what we have is a building which negates SPG, negates what the councillors said they wanted to see in Wimbledon, negates the DRP. And frankly, we're talking about the most successful office building in the town centre, which is only just over 3 decades old, being demolished. And that is the worst thing you can do for the environment, because in 30 years' time, this building clearly will be demolished too. And all the good things you hear today were spoken 3 decades ago when the first building went up. And therefore, if this one's only going to last 3 decades, this is not an environmental approach. Now, I can't understand how this building will be zero emissions by 2030 if it's going to open in 2024. Why can't they make it zero emissions straight away? I'll tell you why they can't make it zero emissions straight away. Because they can't make it zero emissions in 2030. It's always very convenient and hopeful that we'll all forget. Well, 250 people in the last 48 hours will not forget, because they've objected to the bulk, the massing, the site, the scale of this building, which is going to ruin that area. It's going to go against the SPG. It's going to mean that people will just rush past it because there is nothing to stop for. It is going to be a blot. It's going to be a monolith. And for those who get so excited about Croydon and Wandsworth, I can give them an Oyster card and they can go there and stay there, because that's where we'd prefer them, because Wimbledon has a reputation which is world class, and it should not be ruined by people who like to constantly heckle through these meetings, which are a quasi-legal meeting, but they like to heckle, they like to predetermine their planning applications, which is of course illegal, and they don't listen to the valid objections of people. So I'm saying this should be rejected. If you have any respect for this borough, for this town, and for its people, this would be rejected on bulk and massing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Councillor Crowe, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I would like to start by saying that I do recognise the connectivity of Wimbledon Station, and it therefore logically follows that we should perhaps consider the need for additional office space. However, I'm not really convinced that the answer is an office of this size, which accommodates an additional 1,200. Maybe 800 would be a better figure. But moving on from that, the other thing which I found a bit odd about our discussions this evening is colleagues have talked about outstanding and excellent design of the building, but I just can't reconcile that with the design review panel twice giving an amber rating. I think that the building is being oversold here. The third point I'd like to make is that in November of 2020, after much hard work by officers and much consultation with members of the public, we came up with the future Wimbledon plan. And in the future Wimbledon plan, it said that a 12-storey building should be of the size of 42 to 48 metres. Well, I think we should follow that plan. It was consulted on, it was agreed after much hard work, and it is clear as to the guideline, 42 to 48 metres. Now, a building of that height may not provide the 1,200 additional jobs that the current application building does, but it will provide an awful lot of jobs, 800, 1,000, who knows? So we should follow our plan and we should reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crowe. Councillor Henry, Joan.
Thank you, Chair. And, I would like to thank everyone who speak tonight. And my thing is, it is very difficult sometimes in life because changes are very hard to accept. And tonight, I listened to everyone. I visited the site where this new building going to be, and it's really needed. And of course, we have to do something different because we have so many young people nowadays who are out of a job. And right now, as we heard, and as we hear and read, there will be employment for our young people. Of course, people like me, I'm British, we're moving on. So what are we gonna leave for the people who are coming? And these are some of the things that we have to learn to accept. Changes is very important. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Councillor Henry. Councillor Southgate, you indicated you want to speak. Peter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, with Collier's Wood, Britannia Point, we're asking that the inspector accepts that as a pinnacle building in a late submission. Members may be aware. And a similar argument has been made for this building to be recognised as a pinnacle building for Morden. We have no comparable building in Wimbledon at present to be adopted as a pinnacle building, but we do have the SPD recommending to a maximum height of 48 metres. Very much with Councillor Crowe on this, that I feel if we set this aside almost on its first serious outing, what is the point of having adopted it just that short time ago? So really, it does need to respect the SPD in that respect. Other points, these things are so long in the gestation, are they not, that I do have a fear that the world moves on. And I've raised the question of our patterns of work changing. It's been accepted that they are not, in fact, reflected in the SPD. I'm not sure that's a planning grounds, but it is a concern if we're all going to move to no more than 2-3 days a week in the office. And the third point that hasn't really been explored enough, I feel, it's been made very clear that repurposing of the existing building is not an option, but there is just such a massive carbon release from demolition. I noted there is a carbon offset payment of little short than £500,000. Frankly, that's a bit of a bargain at the moment because I think we only charge £95 a tonne, is that? And it will be much higher in the new local plan. So, but this is not really as environmentally friendly as we might hope. And people have made much of Wellington House, actually, which is a repurposed building. They do forget, and I was around, that they didn't like Wellington House at all on its first iteration, but we did, in fact, turn down the first application that came to this committee, and the developers came back with, took one story off and made some other changes, and it was then accepted, and now apparently is a well-loved building. I noticed they even have a tenant for the ground floor. So likewise here, it is, frankly, if we're going to ignore the SPD almost from word go, this does need to be, it does need to be shorter. I don't, the concern of the DRP in particular about overshadowing, I don't know how you address that, frankly, without reducing the height. You know, push come to shove, that's the only way you're going to address the overshadowing of the station square. So for all of those reasons, those are the reservations I have, but overwhelmingly it is about the height. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anyone else. I'll take one more. Councillor McGrath. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 points I'd like to make, and one of which I think I need your guidance on. And the first point is the same point as some of the other colleagues have made, which is about the height. Now, you will recall that we had an amendment to this document to try and reduce the maximum height, which we lost. You know, that's how things go. But during that discussion, there was no debate that, you know, it doesn't really matter what the height is because we can always approve something bigger. The assumption was from all sides of the chamber that that was the height, the maximum height that we were going to build. And now we're having a building that's significantly bigger than that. And I suspect will set a precedent for every other application that we get being above that height. So I do think there's a point about actually having a discussion in the council, reaching an agreement, not one that we agreed with, but one that the council made, and then coming in and building something significantly higher. So I can't agree with Councillor Alan Bretis that it fits in with the master plan. The second point is on the point about jobs that Councillor Henry made, and she's absolutely right, of course, about the need for jobs, but these are not new jobs. These jobs, if they're not in Wimbledon, they will be in Croydon or Sutton. They're not creating new jobs, they're moving jobs about, so it's not like we're having a series of new jobs. And the third point is about the affordable space. Now, I asked a question about this, and what the proposal is that there will be a 10% discount now, for startups and small businesses. And frankly, that isn't a very big discount. And also, you'll recall that the applicant talked about record rents in Wimbledon. So my question is there anything that we can put as a condition that strengthens or increases or ask the officers in their negotiations to increase that 10%, because 10% really doesn't make much of a difference. So I will be opposing it, but I hope that if we do pass it, which I hope we don't, that we could do something more on the affordable rents. Thank you.
Thank you. You have touched on what I was going to say in summation. Yes, we have a standard on the height, which is 48 metres, and the roof line of the edge of this building is a 50, I believe, and it goes a bit higher, set a long way back where the plant is of that extra few metres for the top of the lift shafts and things. And it is for the committee to decide whether we can, because that recommendation of 48 metres is not set in stone, it's not hard and fast. This committee has the power to decide whether it is far too high or whether it's just a little bit over, and that's okay. But that's for the committee to make their decision on. They're not seeing any more people wishing to speak. I'm going to move to the vote, which is the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to it being sent up to the Mayor of London's office and the conditions in the Section 106 agreement as usual. So I'll be looking for votes firstly in favour of the officer's recommendation, which is to grant planning permission. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against. 4. And myself not voting makes the 10 members of the committee. 5, 4, 4 against, and 1 not voting means that application is passed. We will move to agenda item number 9.
Chair, can I just ask one thing? I find a particular councillor heckling throughout these meetings off-putting.
Thank you.
If
I'll
they
chair
could
this
just-
meeting. If I notice the odd comment, I'm going to let go. If there are any serious heckling, I will step in and stop it. But the odd slight aside, I'm going to let go. But
Predetermination.
Councillor Dean, I'm speaking. I would advise all councillors not to do that. I might turn a blind eye to the odd aside, but if any serious heckling gets started, I will put a stop to it. We're going to move on to agenda item number 9, which is 201A South Park Road in Wimbledon. It is a single-story rear extension. We have, as we did with the last application, for people in the room and at home, we will have the officers present the application. Then we have 2 objectors with 3 minutes each, then the applicant with 6 minutes. And then we have 2 local representatives who wish to speak as well, local councillors. So there'll be quite a number of speeches on this. And then, as we just did, we'll go through questions, comments, and a vote. So presenting this one, is it you again, Tim? It's Tim. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the application site is a 2-story house on the south side of South Park Road in Wimbledon. The house is not listed and it's not in a conservation area. The proposal is for a single-story rear extension. This is a ground floor plan of the existing building, existing footprint. This is the existing rear and front elevations. So the building is now a single dwelling house. It did have permission to convert from 2 flats to 1 house, which is why there's appears to be 2 front doors there. It is a single dwelling house as it currently stands now. Existing extension at the back is currently stepped in. There was a previous permission which this proposal also incorporates in the plans, previous permission for alterations to that existing extension. So this is the proposed. It's a single-story rear extension coming out the back here. It is set in from the boundaries on both sides. The previous approved extension extends the property sideways a bit here, and also does some alterations to the boundary on here. Proposed roof plan. So it's currently flat roof extensions near enough throughout at the moment. The proposal is for a flat roof extension with the two roof lights on top. Here is the proposed rear elevation. So a flat roof design, which it stops about here, where there you can just see the pipe, down pipe coming here. So setting off the boundary and off this boundary. Flat roof design with rear glazing and render to match the house. Turn to the side elevations. As you can see here, just outlining the extension. Site pictures. So the case officer has visited the site and has also visited both neighbouring properties either side. So I have photographs from one site and from both properties either side as well. So looking at the back, so the proposal would incorporate the previous permission and it's stepped in off the boundary here and also on that side too. So the extensions previously approved come out from the house to the side. You'll see the footpath down here. So the garden was split because of the previous 2 flats. So that is within the ownership of the application site. So the extension comes out here. This would be removed to make way for the extension. This is a neighbour looking to the, on the right is look at the back of the house. So that's then over here. And this is the case officer visited from this side, looking across. And from some of the windows within the neighbouring property at ground floor level. I believe the extension comes out about 3.7 metres from that building line you can see there. And again, views from the side. So the previous extension does come out to the side towards the windows here. And again here. From the other neighbour to the left, he's looking at the back of the house. This has previous consent now for some alterations to this part. And as you can see here on the right-hand side, so the extension is stepped in and then coming out 3.7 metres. And the view from inside the kitchen window neighbouring property here. Members, I draw your attention to the modifications sheet. You'll note that we've had some additional representations received on the application. Some of the discrepancies noted within some of the plans. However, officers are satisfied that the plans are acceptable. The officers put forward some additional conditions. So condition 3 was incorrect in the original agenda. That's now been rectified in the mod sheet. And also an additional condition 6, which is to obscure glaze a stairwell window on the east side elevation as it is being altered and increased in height, which serves a stairwell. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Right, we have 5 speakers altogether on this, 2 objectors, an applicant who, as last time, will have the sum of the time of the first objectors, and then 2 local councillors to speak. So I'll take them in the order I've got on my list. We do the objectors first. So Elizabeth Rennie, are you here in the room? Great, thank you. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
I'm going to give my spare minutes or seconds to Victoria after me, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Certainly.
Thank you so much. Good evening, members. My husband and my children have lived at 203 for over 20 years. This application breaches DMD2 and D3 and feels like an unfair process given the plans have so many material errors and this site has no PD rights. Most of the plans you've just seen have errors in them. The first most important wall is the gap between the buildings, which is out by 18%, and 1 additional metre of structure will be added to the lounge door outlook, which you just saw no photos of. This level of accuracy invalidates the light report as well as the planning assumptions. Refer to letter dated 8th of Feb. The massing of 199 is also misrepresented in the plans as the side extension application has expired, and this is not an application to build out together. Plans should be clear as the applicants didn't respect the planning rules when they built the loft 20% larger than approved and at such poor quality that materials of the roof had to be replaced after only 3 years. Loss of amenity. On the face of it, the scheme looks like a 15-metre long, 3.1 metre high wall, less than 1 metre from our boundary. Worst, it will be 3.5 metres high, as measured from the point that faces the 203 dining rooms, as they intend to build on top of the finished floor levels. Everyone in this room should know and should have seen the photograph that shows the finished floor levels is not 10 centimetres, and the decking in the plans shows steps leading up is a telltale sign of what's planned. See the email of 8th of Feb. They're building up. The existing height is already 3.2, not the 2.8 that the plans suggest. This is measured from our dining room windows, which is most impacted. This scheme causes harmful loss of light, oppressiveness from the outlook at 3 living rooms. The ridge will only be 1.7 metre away from the 203 side lounge door and creates a tunnelling effect over 15 metres. The 16th of August site visit came for a different scheme, and the officer did not assess the impact on the 15-metre wall and did not take any photographs of the side lounge door. Overlooking will double. Privacy is a major issue. The proposed 4 new windows are only 90 centimetres from the boundary, looking directly into 3 living areas. I noticed no photographs of the new mock-ups of the new windows and the photographs just shown now. The new wider 6-metre bifold door will overlook our kitchen eating table, coming 4 metres closer. Currently, overlooking only affects 1 hallway. The average length of the sight lines across 6 windows will be 3.2 metres. It will feel like you're actually in the same room as your neighbour.
1 minute
sitting
remaining.
on the lounge sofa, the new windows will be staring at you. The existing 1.5-metre boundary fence is owned by 201 with no consideration to change this. Our only recourse is to install a higher fence within our boundary. So this will mean we can no longer use our narrow pathway for bikes and wheelie bins, diminishing our amenity. The windows of 203 have been in existence for more than 40 years, and we are a narrow end of terrace house that relies on the side windows for light. The applicant has already planned 3 large skylights, deeming the new kitchen window unnecessary, and the utility toilet boot rooms could easily be all made opaque. Kitchen conditions to address higher boundary wall, obscure glazing properly across all the windows on the side, except for the kitchen maybe, but that needs, there's major issues on the boundary wall. Reducing the width of the bifold doors to match the 4-metre existing will all help with overlooking. Poor external design. This is the 5th extension to this property. The scheme would create a ground floor plan with a flat roof that's 300% than the original ground floor plan. plan. There are no 8 by 10 metre flat roofs in this neighbourhood. This is a application upon an application and application. The previous application has not actually been built, and they're just putting in application after application. This will be so big that the size of this roof is totally out of keeping with the host building and the area. Thank you, Chair. This recommendation makes no sense.
Time during all of that? That there wasn't any time?
There was time to remotely, and there's no time remaining.
Okay, but there wasn't any time shown on the... Good evening, members. I'm the owner of number 199, and I've lived in the South Wimbledon area for over 20 years. This application will have a severe detrimental impact upon the amenity enjoyed at my property. My concerns have not been adequately assessed or addressed within the officer's report, with a consistent disregard for our request for accurate and clear material information upon which to base their decision, which you've heard about. There have been many attempts to introduce a large rear extension to number 201 over the years. This council and several decision makers before them in refusing planning permissions of large extensions have made clear the sensitivity of the site in terms of impact on the amenity of neighbours. However, the applicant has made 2 applications in an attempt to undermine the normal process to secure permission for piecemeal development, which is neither an improvement to nor materially different from the refused application. This previous application was refused in April 21 because its combined height and depth would result in an unreasonably increased sense of enclosure, harm to outlook, and would be overbearing when viewed from the rear windows and outdoor amenity space of number 199. This current scheme has the same ridge, height, depth, and raised roof ridge proximity as the refused scheme. As such, there's no logical conclusion other than that this scheme is equally harmful to the one refused in April 21. Officers seem to consider that the removal of a small strip at the end of the scheme mitigates the scheme massing, but the depth, height, and proximity of the scheme has been altered at all, hasn't been altered at all to reduce the oppressiveness and harm. And it was this configuration which has the greatest impact on my home. In fact, as I've demonstrated, this cumulative development has a worse design and impact. The refused scheme slope has been revised to be closer to my property and will also be perceived as higher, with a higher boundary wall and shorter and flatter slope to the roof ridge. I will now also be faced with a more visible arrangement of massing facing the full side elevation of a 3.1 metre high boxy bolt-on to the September 21 approval. As such, the overall impact will be worse than the refused scheme. The officer has undertaken no assessment on a site visit of the impact of this extended proposal with increased but unclear heights. The model extracts prepared by an architect show the impact is to all my living and amenity spaces, as officers themselves found to be the case for the refused scheme. The professional opinion letter of 3rd of February confirms that the only reasonable assessment of the current application is that it results in similar, if not identical, extent of harm as previously refused. How can we get here? In 2011, after refusing and on an appeal, an extension of 2.9 metres by 4.2 metres was considered as overbearing an oppressive form of development, which would not be alleviated by the courtyard area. The council then allowed a similar scheme in 2012 with mitigation measures you see today. In September 21, the council approved the courtyard infill, an extension at a height of 3.1 metres, moved the slope and higher roof ridge closer by half a metre, and raised the boundary wall from 2 metres to 2.6 metres for 6.2 metres, thereby losing all the mitigation measures from the 2012 approval and extending it and raising it closer and higher. The current scheme just bolts back on the further 3.7 metres of extension previously refused. As a 5th extension to an already extended dwelling, any further loss of amenity or the poor resultant design is just not justifiable. Thank you for your time. And thank you for not having the speech. That was dreadful, the speaker.
Thank you very much for that. Right, in response to that, Mark Pender, are you in the room or on Zoom?
I'm on Zoom, Chair.
On Zoom, I can see you there. You have up to the 6 minutes of time that the 2 objectors had. So you have up to that if you need to use it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. My name is Mark Pender and I'm a planning consultant representing the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Cllr. Most of what I say probably relates to 199. 203, the impact, well, I'll come back to that in a moment. Mr. and Mrs. Cllr have lived in the flat on the 1st floor since 2014. They acquired the ground floor flat in 2016 with a view to converting both flats into a family home, thus maintaining their roots in this part of Merton. As you know, they secured planning permission last year to do this. Shortly after moving into the property, they started their family and now have 3 children, all under the age of 7. As I said, what they are now trying to create is a family home. They are not developers and are not looking to make a profit before moving on to the next project. The existing property is unlike most of the properties in this part of South Park Road, which are traditional Victorian and Edwardian terrace premises without riggers. 201 South Park Road is, however, a detached property with no outrigger. Before they submitted their first application last year, Mr. and Mrs. Cllr and their advisor spoke to their neighbours at 199 and 203 South Park Road. Initially, the owner of 199 was receptive to some form of extension, although this stance changed. The neighbour at 203 was very much against any extension, so there was no room for further negotiation and discussion. This is clearly their prerogative and part of the normal planning process. I'd like to draw your attention to 2 planning decisions at 201 South Park Road, which are particularly relevant. There is an appeal decision, which you've heard about, from 2012 related to 201 South Park Road. In dismissing the appeal, the inspector was concerned about the loss of light and outlook from the ground floor side windows and patio door at 199. That proposal would have taken the ground floor rear elevation 6.27 metres into the garden at 201 with a height of 2.9 metres for the entire length. The inspector felt that at a height of 2.9 metres, there would be detrimental impact. That's why the appeal was dismissed. In September last year, this council granted planning permission for an extension at 201. The extension was also 6.27 metres deep, but the reason it was permitted was because the height was only 2.6 metres on the boundary with 199, as opposed to 2.9 for the appeal scheme. Officers clearly considered a reduction of 0.3 metres in the height was enough to address the appeal inspector's concerns. It should also be noted that 2 of the windows at 199 that the appeal inspector felt would lose light and outlook was subsequently bricked in by the owner of 199. This permission also pushed out the side elevation 0.8 metres toward 203. However, that still leaves a gap of about 4 metres to the side elevation of 203. The difference between what has been approved and what is now proposed is the extension will be 3.7 metres deeper. However, this element will be pushed in from the boundary with 199 South Park Road by 1.2 metres in order to minimise the impact on that property. In this respect, we consider that there will be minimal impact on outlook and certainly not to the extent it is detrimental. Your officers agree. With regard to daylight and sunlight, we have undertaken a BRE assessment for the windows at 199. This demonstrates full compliance. We have also done the same for 203, where again, there is full compliance. The proposal facing 203 is in fact identical to that which was approved last year. There are other examples of similar depth extensions on the same side of South Park Road, including 209, 211, 213, albeit we fully acknowledge every site is different. Whilst 203 Park Road and 57 Wycliffe have objected, both of these properties also benefit from very long ground floor extensions. In fact, if you grant planning permission this evening, the extension at 203 would still be about 4 metres longer than what you approve. As for 57 Wycliffe Road, that property is extended all the way to the rear boundary, so actually dwarfs what we now propose and is over 20 metres beyond the rear wall of 197 South Park Road. We acknowledge 57 Wycliffe Road is not a dwelling, nevertheless the same principles apply. You've heard from the resident owner of 203 about the concerns with regard to drawing inaccuracy. Officers have obviously responded and stated that as far as they're concerned, the drawings are accurate. You've heard about privacy issues in relation to 203. As I've said, what we propose now is identical to what's already been approved. You've also heard about flat roofs not being prevalent in the area by the resident of 203. That's clearly not the case. The extensions that I've mentioned have flat roofs, and indeed The owner's property at 203 has a very, very long extension, which has a flat roof. Finally, and in conclusion, as local residents and not developers, Mr. and Mrs. Cllr are simply trying to create a home for their young family. The proposals have been carefully assessed by your officers and to a large extent have been informed by the planning history, some approvals, some refusals. The result in what we consider to be a well-designed extension which takes account of adjoining residential amenity. I do hope you agree. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much for that, Mark. Now, I'm going to, before I ask Councillor Ormond to speak, I have changed this rule slightly. You councillors will remember the large development at the corner of Collier's Wood Ward, which we discussed because it was right on the border with Abbey Ward, and an Abbey Ward councillor spoke on it. I'm not sure of the geography around it. How close is this property to the borders with Trinity and Abbey wards?
Thank you, Chair. It's not that far. So if you actually go down South Park Road onto Hayden's Road and go across Hayden's Road, then you're in Abbey Ward itself. Yeah, but it is not a large. I think what I'm basically saying it is in Trinity Ward today.
It is in Trinity Ward, yes. And therefore I don't think I'm going to take the statement from Councillor Benbow because he doesn't represent Trinity Ward and you do. Mm-hmm. And so you will have the 3 minutes to speak on that. I'm sure Councillor Benbow's statement, because he's provided a written statement, can be made available, but I don't really want to break the rules that far in terms of letting people speak on applications that aren't in the ward that they represent. So Councillor Ormond, Hayley, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm here today representing many residents of South Park Road. 201 South Park Road, originally registered plans pretty much identical to these ones you have in front of you today, back in March 2021, for which permission was refused. A further application with much smaller massing was then granted in September, with no conditions placed with the approval to minimise the increased sense of enclosures, such as capping the roof ridge, heights and wall. The neighbours were then flabbergasted when seeing that a new application was registered in October, with new plans nearly identical to those that had been rejected in April 2021. I visited the neighbouring properties, have viewed from the outside 201 South Park Road, which is a substantial family-sized home already. With what I've viewed, the impact of the size and scalability of the extension will impact many families on neighbouring properties, including those living on Wycliffe Road. Wycliffe Road is around the corner from South Park Road, and the proposed height of this application would rise above that of the commercial building on the corner, making it stick up in height. The application itself is incredibly large for its size en masse and will severely impact neighbours' lives. DMD2 is designed to encourage us all to be considerate of our neighbours, but no consideration has been given to the neighbours to be shown in these designs. Some clear points for you all to consider this evening. Number one, the plans are nearly the same as the ones that were rejected, and neighbours consider it to be more oppressive as the original one that was refused. Number two, the original application was declined as it would be contrary to DMD2 in respect to the neighbouring amenity by virtue of its combined height and depth, would result in an unreasonable increased sense of enclosure, harm of outlook, and will be overbearing when viewed from the rear window and outdoor amenity space of number 199 South Park Road. Given these plans are nearly identical to those rejected, this reason should remain upheld. And understand an independent surveyor has visited the properties this week and have found a 20% inaccuracy on the drawings that have actually been submitted to
1 minute remaining.
Panel. The designs plans are not in keeping with the surrounding properties, with its 10 by 8 metre flat roof extension higher than the commercial property on the corner. It is not in keeping with the rest of the street. It is out of keeping the area, given the scale and overbearing nature, would be to the detriment of many neighbours due to it being long, wide and tall. The plans do not create any additional housing and would have a detrimental health impact on the neighbouring properties, mainly due to the effect of privacy, overbearing, increased sense of enclosure, privacy and light into the properties and outside areas. And number 6, as far as I'm aware, the sunlight report that was mentioned before was for a previous application, not for this one. Should the panel decide that there is insufficient reasons to decline permission, I've probably got some suggestions if there were to be conditions. Would you like to consider those later on? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Onward. Right, first off is back to Officer Tim Bryson to respond to any particular points raised in those contributions.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, really, there was a previous refusal which is set out in the planning history section of the report. This scheme is not the same as the previous refused application. The previous refusal sought the extension on the shared boundary with number 199, and it's in the same position in relation to number 203. So that previous refusal was in regard to the impact on 199 only within the reason. With regards to daylight sunlight, they have commissioned a study which does take into account both sides, both neighbours. And with regards to some points regarding the flat roof design, it is a flat roof design, but there are some flat roof extensions in the surrounding area. There is one at 203 to the east too. Overall, Chair, I hope that assists with the debate this evening.
Thank you very much. Okay, members of the committee, can I say any questions on the report? Dean and then Crow in that order. David.
I'm just trying to understand the numbers. I try to watch University Challenge and understand all the numbers that have been thrown out here. You rejected as council officers something that was 6.27 metres long, correct? And 2.9 metres high and 0.8 metres wider. That's correct, isn't it? Well, I'd have to wait for an answer. I'd have to hurry you, as they say in the University Challenge. I'm just trying to understand. This seems to be bigger than what you've rejected. That's what I'm getting to.
Councillor Dean, so the previous appeal decision was 6.2 metres deep off the original rear wall of the house at 2.9 metres high eaves. The extension application that we refused under delegated authority on the reference 21P0834, 4.8 in the agenda, that was for the same depth as what's proposed. It's just that was up to the boundary of number 199, whereas this application, it's set in by 1.2 metres.
This is 9.9 metres, isn't it, though? This is 6.27 plus 3.7?
Okay.
Is the question? Yes, it is,
sorry,
isn't it?
Yeah, in combination
This is longer. This is longer.
In combination with the previous approved.
Yeah, but this is in total longer than what was rejected.
Yes, that's clear. It's narrower, so it comes away from the boundary of 199 to the west, and it is longer. Councillor Crowe, Stephen, you had a question.
Sorry, Chair. I think my question has probably been asked and answered, but I just wonder if the clarity would be enhanced if we could have up on the screen the plan, and Mr. Bryson could perhaps indicate how it differed from the previously rejected application. So the page 246 is quite a nice plan, or page 247. Yeah, so perhaps Mr. Bryson, you could indicate how what is proposed differs from what was rejected.
Yes, Councillor Crowe. So the previously rejected application under the 21P reference number, which I mentioned earlier, was it was up to the boundary here on this side. This side has remained the same, and it is in combination with the previously approved extension as part of these plans here. So the previous rejected application with the reason for refusal cited under 4.8 was on the boundary here. In the same depth, yeah.
Okay, any other questions from councillors? There being none, we'll go to comment and debate from members of the committee. I see anyone wants to speak? No, okay, we'll move straight to the vote. The recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions, which I'm sure if it is passed, Councillor Warmwood will discuss with officers. But can I see all those in favour of the recommendation to grant permission? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All those against? 1, and myself not voting makes the 10. So everyone has voted and that application is passed. Now, we have been going for 2 hours. We've done 2 of the 5 applications, probably the 2 major ones. So I'm going to suggest a 5 up to maximum 10-minute comfort break. We'll go to the toilet, get some water. We'll see you back in 10 minutes. Okay, as the members are all in the room but milling, if I could ask them to start moving back towards their seats. As we had a small break, anyone interested in the football might be interested to know that Liverpool and Arsenal are both 1-0 up. Right, are we ready to go back to broadcasting to the public at home and to Zoom?
Yes, we're all live, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, next one is item number 7, which is the Rufus Business Building Centre, Ravensbury Terrace. And an officer to present this report in the same way that we've done the others previously.
Thank you, Chair. The application before members of the committee tonight is for Rufus Business Centre in Wimbledon Park. This is the site here outlined in red. This is just an existing plan showing the existing block plan showing the buildings on the site at present. The existing buildings are split into 3 blocks. These are 2/3-storey commercial buildings of office accommodation and storage and distribution. Just going through some of the plans now, and so this is the proposed site plan. So just to give the site a bit of context, over on this side here is Deferred Road Park. And also here is Dawlish Avenue. The railway line sits along here, the railway embankment. Whilst these are the buildings here proposed. This site here is the former Ravensbury industrial site, now known as Elsfield Place. So this is the ground floor plan. Just to go through the proposal, the application is for 96 units, residential units. 8 of those units will be affordable housing. They will be all the affordable housing will be located in this building here, which is Block D. There'll be 880 square metres of commercial floor space over the ground floor. This will be office stroke flexible office co-working space. The buildings will range in height between 3 stories to 8 stories. The buildings on this side of the site will be the lower stories in height, will be 3 stories here, raising up to a maximum height of 8 stories along the railway embankment. As part of the scheme, there will be 3 disabled spaces here for access via an undercroft, and also a visitor car parking space here and a car club space. All the residential units will be subject to permit-free development. The site is located within flood zone 2 and 3. This means that the site is in a medium to high flood risk area. As you will see in the report, some objections have been received. The main objections relate to access into Deferred Road Park and also widening of the park to create a wider access along Dawlish Avenue here. But just to note that those proposals were simply put in the applicant's design and access statement as an option. Any new access into the park and a wider access here does not form part of the application before members of committee. The application does, however, create a new link through underneath the undercroft of the building here for pedestrians and cyclists. However, this access will be blocked off until such a time that it's deemed appropriate to provide access into the park. Just going through some site photos. So these are the existing buildings on the site. They range between 2 and 3 story commercial buildings. This is the recent development on the adjacent site, Ravensbury Industrial Estate. Buildings ranging from 3 to 6 stories in height. Over on his side, this is Dawlish Avenue. This view is taken from Deferred Road Park. The application site is located here. And you can see larger buildings in the background on adjacent to the railway tracks. This is a close-up view. The application site from the park is here. Properties in Dawlish Avenue are over this side. And again, you can see the larger buildings in the distance. This is a photograph taken from Dawlish Avenue. So the application site here is on the left-hand side. So within the applicant's design and access statement, this is the section where they but as an option to widen the access to create, improve access to a site over here, which is called Wellington Works. But I'd like to reiterate that that does not form part of the application before members of the planning committee. This is a photograph taken in between the existing buildings from Dawlish Avenue. And again, you can see the larger buildings in the background. The application site here is on the right-hand side. These properties here on the left are 40A and 40B, Dawlish Avenue. Again, this is just another photograph showing the access road down Dawlish Avenue. Again, this is not, there is no changes to this access as part of the application. This is just a photograph taken, it leads into Hazelmere Industrial Estate on the right-hand side here. And it just gives you some sort of context of the larger buildings which are forming part of the character of the area. So moving to the first floor plan, this just gives you a sort of a flavour of the residential units proposed. All the units will be dual aspect. This is generally created by the external walkway and also the narrow nature of the site. All of the flats will have private amenity space in addition to a number of roof gardens. So this is the roof plan, which shows how the building steps up in scale towards the larger buildings along the railway embankment. It'll have a step down design, and at each level there will be communal amenity spaces. All of the units meet minimum space standards. So this is a view from the railway line, just showing the building, how it would be viewed from the railway track. Here is the adjacent development at Hazelmere Industrial Estate. As you can see, there's a similar height here, and then it steps up in height. This is just a close-up of the elevational treatment of the when viewed from the railway track, and just shows the type of detailing proposed. Again, this is a cross-section through the site showing how the building will step up in height. In the distance will be the Ravensbury, Dernsford Road Park. And this is the railway embankment here. As you can see, the larger buildings are directed towards the railway embankment, and they lower in height towards the residential properties, which are on this side of the site. This is the view from the park, public park. So the way the building has been designed is to increase in height as we step away from the residential properties over in Dawlish Avenue, and larger buildings are directed towards the adjacent railway line. This is a section through the site, so in the larger part of the development. So you can see how it increases up in height up to the maximum height of eight stories. It's just a close-up of the elevational treatment of the larger block, main block. This is an elevation showing the block D, which I referred to earlier, which is that the affordable housing units. There'll be eight units in this building here. So that's 3 stories. This was designed very much in keeping with the adjacent Hazelmere development in terms of height and massing, to try and mitigate any impact on the properties in Dawlish Avenue. As you can see in the distance, this is the larger building. This is the larger section of the buildings, cores A, B, and C. These are, again, adjacent to the railway embankment and some distance away from neighbouring properties. This section here shows the building, how the building steps up in height with a colonnade design adjacent to the Dernsford Road Park. So just moving on to some CGIs provided by the applicant. This just shows the typical detailing proposed, predominant use of brick, and how the building has been designed to try and, with various sections, to try and reduce the massing and the bulk of the building. This is a view taken from Dernsford Road Park. As I referred to earlier, the building has a colonnade design. This is quite a useful design tool to try and reduce massing and impact on the park. Another CGI showing the main block of the building, just the type of detailing proposed. You will note some of the buildings are actually raised. This is due to the flood issues on the site. This is block D, which will accommodate the 8 affordable housing units I referred to earlier, and in the distance will be Dernsford Avenue. This is the view from Dernsford Avenue, that there's an access road along here. Just to note that this will not form part of a public access. During discussions, we will, and conditions, we will impose conditions that there will be higher boundary walls or fences along this access. So in conclusion, officers fully support the scheme. Officers believe it's a high quality development, and the design has overcome issues relating to flooding on the site. The site is considered to maximise its potential in accordance with MPPF, providing 96 good quality flats, commercial units with increased job prospects. The application is in accordance with the site allocation, which is a mixed use of commercial and residential. The development will have no adverse impact on neighbours, highways, biodiversity, contamination, sustainability, archaeology, air quality and trees. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions in Section 106 agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We have 2 objectors, and then, as we've done before, the agent with the combined time. I'll take them in the order that I have on my list. I need to find out if they're in the room or on Zoom. The first one is Andrei Saltykov, and you're in the room here. So go ahead, you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you, dear committee members and chair. At the busiest of times in its recent history, the slight industrial site was home to a daily population of about 100 people tops. This proposal will multiply it 5-fold. Exactly the same has already happened to the adjacent Hazelmere site to the north, and will happen in the future to the sites to the south of it. The current occupancy of the adjacent light industrial site at the Wellington Works is about 10-15 people. If the sites own a Goldcrest have their way to convert it to residential use, this population will increase 10-fold. These 3 sites combined will have more than 1,000 new daily users. Cumulatively, this is a huge change. Yet we, the local residents, are constantly being told that each of these sites can only be considered on their own merits, i.e. in isolation. This approach is simply harmful and wrong. For 6 years, we have been pleading with the council to ensure that any redevelopment of the Rufus site allows for a traffic route through to Wellington Works. The issue of access was central in the community consultation process, and the applicant was made well aware of this entirely sensible approach and the strength of the feeling in the local community. Please note the petition that was signed by about 350 people. Yet we have not been heard. The proposal has no vehicular connection and only a gate for future pedestrian access to the Goldcrest site. If approved, the developer will eventually gain access to the park by stealth. This is good for them, clearly, as a small increase in the value of each flat with direct access to the park will deliver millions of pounds in additional profit. In return, the council will only get a token contribution to the maintenance of the wreck and a handful of affordable flats. And what about us, the existing neighbors? By not providing vehicular access to Wellington Works via Rufus, we will get lorries, trucks, and vans reversing the whole length of Dawlish Avenue and the narrow track off Dawlish Avenue, literally next to our windows and front doors, because the existing Wellington Works access to the eastern side of the wreck is completely inadequate. This is not speculation. This is exactly what's already happening. And I hope that you saw the photo evidence that we and the neighbors sent to you earlier this week. If you approve this proposal, the current Wellington Works appeal will be hugely affected. The developer will no doubt claim that they now have a safe pedestrian access to Rufus, opening the door for Dawlish Avenue, a cul-de-sac, to drown in the new traffic, never seen on the street before Goldcrest's ill-advised purchase of their site. There is a sensible, sustainable, and safe approach, which is to coordinate these developments and provide vehicular access to Wellington Works through the Rufus Business Centre. I therefore ask you, on behalf of many of our neighbours, to refuse this application on the basis of harmful impact on the area's transport network and the unacceptable risk to the safety of the existing and future road users. At the very least,
that is your 3 minutes.
Delay the determination until the planning inspector makes a ruling on the adjacent site.
Great, thank you very much. Sorry. Second objector is Chris Beach. Are you also in the room? There we go. And you will also have 3 minutes. And your microphone's on. Great, start, go ahead.
Okay, I request the application is refused on the following bases: bulk and height, urban greening, density, and social housing. The pre-application plans for the Rufus estate included an 11-storey building. This is far higher than any other nearby buildings, and it is disturbing the developer thought this was in any way appropriate. LBM feedback was that the scale and massing would be harmful to the local townscape. The development was then reduced by 3 stories. However, at 8 stories, it is still far higher than nearby buildings. 2 stories higher than Earlsfield Place, which adjoins Rufus to the north, 2 stories higher than the Banham building, which was used as the benchmark for Earlsfield Place. Dawlish Avenue is a residential cul-de-sac immediately to the west of Rufus. Our gardens are 3 metres from the boundary of Rufus. The current Rufus proposal is 5 stories higher than the houses on Dawlish Avenue. It will be overbearing. Rufus is the same distance from Dawlish as Earlsfield Place. In 2016, LBM made the developer of Earlsfield Place reduce the height of that development to 6 stories as it was too tall and not in keeping with the local environment. As a minimum, this precedent should be maintained. The Rufus block will also dominate the local recreation ground, completely changing the character of Dernsford Rec and making one of the few green spaces in the area feel very urban. Rufus also sits near the River Wandle and has potential to form part of the Wandle Trail. The Wandle Trail is supposed to provide an opportunity to see local wildlife and escape the hustle and bustle of southwest London. We should not be lining its route with 8-story tower blocks. The new flats in nearby King George's Park at 4 or 5 stories will be a much better height and architectural template to improve local community and amenity. Urban greening. LBM feedback on the Rufus pre-application was that urban greening is essential to make the development acceptable. However, the level of greening contained in the current plan does not even meet minimum GLA standards. All Merton developments should exceed the GLA minimum, especially a development that is so overbearing. We've seen firsthand there is a chance that current greening targets are not even met. A key greening feature of Earlsfield Place is a pocket park. However, this has been installed with AstroTurf instead of grass. A green terrace visible to Dawlish also contains a single small bush. The view from of Rufus from Dawlish will be an 8-story blank brick wall. It will be oppressive. Greening on Rufus should be increased to improve local amenity. Density. The project is overly dense, mainly 50-metre squared single-bed flats, which are inappropriate for the area, and hardly any 3-bed flats for families. And finally, social housing. Only 8 of the 96 units are affordable housing. This is unacceptably low. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now we have a response from the agent. I've got down Ben Young and Stephen Sinclair. You have 6 minutes between you if you need that amount of time. I don't know whether we can change the microphone from one to the other. You may be able to do it yourselves. There is a button in front of you which should turn your microphone on. Okay, but we'll start now, and this will turn amber after you've had 5 of the allotted 6 minutes, as I said, if you need those. So please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of our application for the mixed-use redevelopment of Rufus Business Centre. The site consists of 3 tired buildings which are of little architectural merit. Whilst this is an undesignated existing employment site, it is surrounded by an area of evolving character whereby former industrial sites have been redeveloped to provide high-quality residential and mixed-use regeneration schemes, demonstrating the attractiveness of Merton as a place to invest, live and work. In accordance with current and emerging local plan policies, our application proposes the re-provision of employment floor space as part of a mixed-use development. The new office floor space is designed to appeal to the co-working market, which has become increasingly popular over the last decade, but of which there is limited provision within Merton. It's anticipated the efficient use of the space, in combination with its attractive design and layout, will see it generate more jobs at the site than currently exist. It's also important to note the site is proposed for allocation in the draft new local plan for 90 to 106 new homes alongside employment uses, and that by virtue of this allocation, your officers already clearly identified the site as suitable for a development that will significantly contribute to meeting the council's acute identified need for new market and affordable housing within the borough. A total of 96 1-, 2 and 3 bedroom homes will be provided, all of which will be dual aspect and offer a high standard of amenity for occupants with good quality of light, ventilation and space. Each home will have its own terrace and residents able to access shared amenity and play space across the roofscape and at ground floor, where a comprehensive landscaping scheme is proposed with the objective of creating an ecological and social enclave. Due to the highly sustainable location of the site with good access to public transport, the scheme will be predominantly car-free except for visitor and disabled parking and a car club bay. The scheme will deliver 8 affordable homes, providing a mixture of London affordable rent and intermediate housing. We have sought to maximise the amount of affordable housing, and our financial viability assessment has been independently scrutinised by your professional advisors, who agree this is the maximum amount that can be delivered. The predominant reason for this is a significant cost of cleaning up the existing contamination on the site, which we know from experience in developing the adjacent former Hazelmere industrial estate contains radiological material and will cost in excess of £2 million. Were this development not to proceed, then the council will be left with a heavily contaminated site with little to no prospects of housing delivery. We have worked closely with your officers throughout an extensive pre-application process and subsequent post-submission amendments to progress the scheme to that you see in front of you tonight. We also sought pre-application advice from the GLA, who had no objections to a larger scheme that we presented, but nevertheless we took the decision to reduce the height and amount of development to ensure the scheme would be more sympathetically adjacent to the existing taller buildings in Earlsfield Place and transition in scale successfully to existing homes in Dawlish Avenue. Your officers have carefully scrutinised the application, finding that it accords with relevant policies. We have carefully considered and incorporated matters such as flood risk, energy, sustainable construction, neighbour and residential amenity, fire safety and biodiversity into design, resulting in the high quality scheme presented to you. We believe this development will make good and efficient use of an existing underutilised brownfield site to provide much needed new housing, and we respectfully ask you to endorse your officers' recommendations and resolve to grant the planning permission accordingly. Thank you.
From the outset, approaching the design of this, we worked with good research and good knowledge on the aspirations of future Merton, merging policy from Merton, merging policy from GLA. And we had a holistic approach to this. We were aware of objections previously on the Wellington Works and had picked up that a key thing that was encouraged by the GLA, future Merton, Merton officers, and the Merton eventual SPD was a pedestrian cycle route through the proposal site. The objectors raised the fact that there's a petition for a road. We did look at a road. This is addressed in the excellent officer's report. It's also addressed in the design access statement, where we had the results of professional consultants on flood risk, sustainability, engineering, civil engineering and transport to look at how a road could work. That road would fail to comply with a huge variety of not just Merton local policies, but also policies in respect to the London plan. That's listed out in the design access statement. And just to summarise, one of the objectors talks about sustainability. Having a road through there gives us little chance to introduce the amount of green space placemaking that was highly encouraged to do through the design process, which is quite unique in this project. And what I mean by that is that we had a very constructive, very detailed, thorough assessment when we had a larger scheme, which we proved that didn't have an impact on neighbouring amenity and provided much needed housing in an age of housing crisis. Following on from that, we felt that we could still support a taller scheme and went to the GLA, where we were further scrutinised in terms of design. We looked closely at the placemaking aspect, the sustainability with the GLA, and the appearance, the active ground, and getting that grain of the nature of recent developments on this side of the borough boundary, but also on Wandsworth, just to the north, and over the other side of the railway line. One last thing to pick up on is in respect to the sustainability and urban greening. I feel that's covered in the officer's report. We've got an urban greening factor of 0.38. We've got blue roofs, a great deal of attenuation. We've got green roofs. We've got a public landscape realm that was we consulted on with the Wandle Valley Forum, and we had picked out a lot of the landscaping concept based on some of the species.
Okay.
And so forth.
From to draw it to a close.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are the only three speakers on this one. So we move back to either David or Tim. Did you want to come back on any specific points raised in those contributions?
Coming back to one of the main points that the objectors raised regarding creating a new access through the site to serve an adjacent site, Wellington Works. I would refer members' attention to the mod sheet where officers have responded on that point. Officers do acknowledge that the merits of those points raised by the objectors. Unfortunately, officers have limited powers and there's no policy justification for us to insist on a new access to serve an adjacent development. We did suggest early in the process for the applicant to look at the feasibility of providing a new access. And in their response, which is in the application, the main issue is why they can't do that is because of the flood constraints on the site. Creating a new access through the site would cause displacement or flooding. So that's the first point regarding the new access. In terms of affordable housing, the low offer, there are going to be 8 units delivered on site, and the level of affordable housing has been subject to viability testing by the council's independent assessor. Turning to matters relating to bulk and height, it is correct that the application was taken at pre-application stage to the GLA, who were happy with the increased height. The applicant did choose to lower the height from 11 stories to 8 stories. And also the height is in keeping with other similar developments along the River Wandle and railway embankment in terms of the larger buildings. And the buildings do lower in height towards the more sensitive residential properties. In terms of urban greening, it is correct that the urban greening does fall below the GLA standards. However, the GLA standards are only guidelines, and the shortfall is very minor, 0.02%. And in terms of density, maybe we'd like to make the point that in terms of the housing mix, there will be 43% of family accommodation proposed here, 2 and 3 bedrooms. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, now I open it to questions from members of the committee. Dean, Alambretis, Draper, McGrath, in that order.
So
Councillor Dean.
So I'm just trying to understand access here. So where is the pedestrian access, and is there any guaranteed vehicular access?
Let's take that one question, then we'll match up the next 4 in 2 pairs.
I'll just show you on the floor plan, it'd be easier to show. So in terms of access, the only access, potential access, would be a pedestrian and cycle access through the site here, which in the future, if it is deemed acceptable to have an access into the park, the gates here will be removed, and then there will be pedestrian and cycle access. There is no vehicle access. This is the Wellington site, Wellington Works site here. There is no vehicle access proposed. The access to the site is from Elshill Place here, which would be a continuation, and then the road stops here. So there is no vehicle access through.
So there is vehicular access to the right coming in, and then it stops. So if you were a fire engine or an ambulance, how far away would the ambulance stop to the flats? Is that like 100 meters, 10 meters?
So there's a turning circle here. So so the emergency vehicles will be able to drive straight up to this point here.
And there's nothing locked. There's no lock gates to the right. That's free public access.
That's a continuation of the existing road and Hazelmere Industrial Estate.
Okay. The next questions I have are Councillors Alambretis and Draper in that order. We'll take 2 and then go back to the officers. So Stephen first.
Chair. My question is on the contaminated land. I'm saddened that the level of affordable housing is low, but I understand that's due to the enormous cost that the applicant has to pay to deal with the contaminated land that will be left to be dealt with by the council should this not go ahead. Just talk me through the type of contaminated land, what's this for, the history of the usage of that land.
Okay, we'll come to that when we've heard from Councillor Draper as well.
Actually, I was going to ask a very similar question on the contaminated land. I want to know precisely how contaminated is. But I also want to ask another question about the affordable homes, the puny the 8 affordable homes. Am I right in thinking they're set apart in their own little tiny block?
You are, I believe, but David.
That is correct. So the affordable housing will be in its own block. This is block D, which is the smaller block adjacent to, so it's this block here. So that, yeah, there will be 8 units in there, and they would all be the affordable housing units. Coming back to the point about contamination, officers have been in discussions and consultation with the council's environmental health officers, who are fully aware of the issues on this site and also the adjacent site. So, so in terms, coming back to the point about affordable housing, there will be early and late stage reviews as part of the Section 106. So any increase in profit will be able to claw that back as part of those processes.
Okay, thank you. In this order, Councillors McGrath and then Southgate have questions as well. So, Simon.
Yeah, mine's a very quick one, and it's about the comment about the demand for 3-bedroom flats, which it says is very low. Is that something that it comes from the council officers' own knowledge, or is that something the developers have said?
Wrong button, sorry. And Councillor Southgate, Peter.
Thank you. Density, para 7.517 talks at some length about density without ever saying what it actually is. Do you have a figure?
Okay, David.
So come to the first point about the number of 3-bedroom units, that statement has come from the applicant. They've taken some advice from local experts. There are also some issues regarding obviously flooding on the site, which restricts sometimes the number of 3-bedroom houses, for example, that could be provided. And also, if we were to look at houses on the site, for example, that would result in not as many units being proposed, and you could argue that that doesn't maximise the potential. So in terms of density, there is no density figures in the London plan anymore. Density is based on a design approach with a number of parameters, and as set out in the report, the council are accepting the density proposed, given the other types of development in the area and how close the site is to public transport and local jobs.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'm going to open it up to, is this another question or another question yet? Councillor.
The calculations that were made which said that you could only actually afford 8 affordable houses, have they been made? I can't find them in the report. Are they set out fully in the report? And if they aren't set out fully in the report, can they be set out fully before we make a decision?
There will be an viability report. Some of the details may be in the report, but I don't think we have the full report.
So the viability report was submitted with the application that was subject to review by the council's viability assessors. So it has been agreed that the 8 units proposed is the viable amount. So
not by, sorry, to beg your pardon, I don't mean to but it hasn't been agreed by us. I'd like to see the report before I agree or disagree with it, because it does seem to be very, very small.
It has been agreed by the council.
Not by us, though.
Not by this committee. I'll come on to that in a second, I think. Councillor Butler, with a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And just to maybe add to the complexity of the affordable housing, which I do think is too low, but I'll make a comment about the difficulties we have as councils in that later on. The affordable housing itself is set aside in its own block. I've read a lot about the difficulties that poses in the future for residents of these types of developments in setting aside not only a different rent area, but almost kind of defining class. Are there other developments that Merton Council, just at the top of your memories as the officers here, we have had affordable housing set aside in this way? Because I from my memory of the decisions I've been involved in, they've been within the same blocks, in the same groups. And is there, my other question, opportunity to have a condition that these houses are within the other blocks as well, rather than set aside on their own?
Okay, I think I'll come back on this a little, because it is more of the sort of political decision making that we're making than officer comments. Although if David wants to come in with anything, we don't have the full. I mean, most of the time we have to trust that the reports on whether any, if any, sustainable affordable housing can be provided. I mean, and it is linked in with the cost of clearing up the pollution from former uses of the site. And I think I'm going to, from the chair, entirely agree with Cllr Butler that I think it's the kind of ghettoisation of building a development like this and having all the social housing or affordable housing shut off in the corner away from everybody else. It is reinforcing those strata within society we have that I don't think is a good thing. So those are two I would say, comments that I have on it. The options we have are, obviously, we can pass it. We can defer it to another meeting to try and get more information on these issues, or we can reject it and send it back to the drawing board. I don't think, and I'm going to ask officers on this, I don't think we can ask the developers, because we have to pass or not the plans that are in front of us, and the plans that are in front of us are for the affordable housing to be a separate block. So I don't think we can condition to change that, but I will ask officers' advice on that.
Chair, thank you. With regards to the affordable housing block, so having it as a separate block like this actually makes it more attractive for the housing associations who would take on the building. Because there's 8 units, it does lend itself to actually, on a site like this, to have it as a small separate unit. It does pose issues with small numbers of affordable homes when you try to blend them into an existing building with private housing. So my advice of this is that no, we couldn't condition changing that aspect. What I can say is that the applicant has outlined that they are the developers that had undertaken the Hazelmere Industrial Estate site, which is next door, which has delivered on-site affordable homes. So we are hopeful that this will deliver the on-site affordable homes in this separate block.
Okay, I'm going to open up for comments. I know Councillor Henry got my attention just before, and then Councillor Dean, and then I'll come to see if there are any further. Councillor Henry, Jane.
Thank you, Chair. My concern is, are there any health risks where the contamination of the land is? I mean, you know, in the future, is there any risk to the people who may be living there?
I think I can answer that one in that as we've talked about, the cost of making sure there is no risk and making it safe for people to live on that land is what the developers are saying, precludes them from building any further social housing, because that would be a cost to the cleanup operation. Councillor Dean.
So I think it's a very creative proposal. And as long as there truly are commercial jobs on ground floor, then there's not such a loss of jobs. I have to say, of course, the reality isn't always what you hear at these wonderful committees where everything's going to be perfect. But often when you see things built, they're not. It is a creative proposal, but I think it has a number of problems, mainly because of the site. Anybody who looks at access, that's the problem. I mean, there are literally hundreds of vans that come and go these days in roads, delivering parcels, etc. I've huge concern with if there was ever a fire. I think the 8 stories is a massive issue, and we've seen this around London. And I'd hate to sit here and say, okay, we've got the affordable, we've got the 96 homes, and then we find in 5 or 6 years' time that there is a fire risk. And I think the height of the buildings, being that far away from a road, I think is too dangerous. And I think it shouldn't be passed on that. And in terms of affordable homes, there are lots of, they call it pepper potting. I think that Rains Park, Waitrose, it's all separate. We're not going to be able to change that because the housing providers do want everything in one area, but it does lead to ghettoisation. I think the two further things that we have to reject it on is one, there isn't enough affordable homes. And secondly, there's not enough balance. There's mainly 1-bedroom homes, which are more profitable than the 2 and 3 bedrooms. So I really do think that if this is genuinely going to work for Merton Council and for the people of Merton, then it needs to be lower than 8 because of the fire risk. There needs to be some way that they can get better access, and they absolutely need to get better access for ambulances, etc. Because I don't see that at the moment. They need to work harder on that. There needs to be more affordable homes, and there needs to be more 2 and 3 bedroom flats.
Thank you. I'll take them in this order. Draper, Butler, Allen-Brutus. Next, first.
Right, sorry, Chair. Before I'm prepared to make a decision on this, I need to understand exactly what the contamination is for 2 reasons. First of all, to find out whether it really is as bad as we're saying it is. And second of all, if it is that bad, will it be okay once it's cleared up? It goes back to what Joan was saying. You know, can we be sure if it's that bad that it's actually going to be safe to build on even after a clear up? And second of all, of course, how the costings. I need to understand how expensive genuinely it will be to clear, what the building costs are, and how much is expected to be made in selling the buildings. In other words, I want to see a balance sheet because I don't like the idea of only 8 affordable homes, and I need to be convinced on that. Finally, on the business of the little ghetto, I think that it has been done with a separate staircase rather than a separate building before. Putting people in a separate building is really just an invitation to actually have people pointing at you. And I personally don't like it at all. That's you can say that's just a personal preference, but those things together, I couldn't vote for this now. I'd be quite happy to defer it until.
Okay, I was about to come into it. I think Councillor Dean's contribution earlier was an argument for rejecting. Councillor Draper's argument there was an argument for deferring, as far as I could hear it. We have 2 more wishing to speak, Councillors Butler and then Allen-Brutus, and then we'll come on to deciding which votes we're taking in what order. But Ben, Councillor Butler, Ben.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Nick, Councillor Draper, because I was about to come on to potentially deferring this, because there are, you've very well set out there the unknown questions here, and I think there is an opportunity on points on both sides about the access and the more detail about the contamination, and also maybe a reconsideration, in my opinion, even though, yes, you're right, that there is a benefit for housing associations coming in with 1 block, but we're talking about 8 homes. If they're talking about putting a load in and increasing the affordable housing, then I'll take it. But at the moment, for this small amount, I think you can put them in the buildings. I think there is room for other considerations here. So I'm actually saying we should defer this and get this information, maybe we can.
Thank you. I'll take that as a seconder for Councillor Draper's proposal to defer. Councillor Allen-Brutus, you wanted to speak.
Thank you. I did have a note about supporting, but my colleagues have raised some questions. They want some more information. I want to respect that. So I'll be supporting a move to defer.
Okay, Councillor Southgate, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. So in this particular site, there are 2 givens. One is apparently a decontamination cost of 2 million. And the second is our requirement for 40% affordable housing. So that really should be the basis on which you decide whether you're going to buy the site or not. Now, okay, the complication here is I suspect that Goldcrest already own the site, and I'm not. And really, we ought to be tougher on this one so that people do appraise whether or not they want to pay or the point I made the other day, actually, be tempted into overpaying for a site because they know that they can take out the balance by reducing the proportion of affordable housing. That really is the bind we get ourselves into here. I frankly would refuse, but we'll see what colleagues.
Thanks, thank you, Councillor Southgate. Now, Councillor Quilliam, comments.
Sorry to come in so late in the day. I think I'm getting a feeling from colleagues that there's an interest in deferring, and I think I probably would support that if colleagues do want further information. I just did want to come in on because I know there's been a lot of talk about the affordable housing. I think one of the things that we have to, if we do defer it and then it comes back, we have to kind of think about is that if we want more affordable housing, more than likely, you know, even if we've seen the viability report, even if we get all this information, more than likely we'll need a higher and denser development. That's typically, we know as a planning committee, I know from sort of my professional experience, that's typically what happens if you're going to make these kind of things affordable. So I just wanted to make that point. If we do defer it tonight and it does come back, we need to think about that.
Okay. For comments from myself, and it is about the contamination issue. Obviously, that was caused by somebody, a business, I assume, and if that business is still in existence, surely they should be cleaning up their own mess and paying for it. And I don't know. And so I'm not hearing any member of the committee saying we should pass it tonight. So the decision we have is between two options: to reject outright, which sends it back to the drawing board for probably a much longer period to make more bigger changes, or we defer it for just 5 weeks till the next meeting, or possibly one more meeting after that. So I think the decision you have to make is whether you want minor adjustments that could be done by deferring to the next meeting, or at the most, I think, the one after, or do you want more major adjustments to the scheme, which would mean rejecting and sending the developers back. So we'll take some comments on that. Councillor Draper first.
Chair, I wouldn't be able to make a decision without the information that I've been given. So the deferral, as far as I'm concerned, is to be able to spell out precisely what the concerns are with the contamination and show that balance sheet of how expensive it's going to be. Yeah,
we have that.
And it's only after that I'll be able to understand whether it's
Councillor Lambert.
Yeah, I think we should move to deferral. I'm pretty pro this, but I sense we've got some questions that need to be answered, some more information. I don't think we're calling for whole-scale changes, so let's move to deferral.
Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I favour rejection rather than deferral. It seems to me this application is flawed in so many ways. The overbearing height, the lack of access, the unneighbourly development because of landlocking the Wellington Road. I mean, there's the affordable housing, this ghettoisation. There's more affordable housing, there wouldn't be the ghettoisation. I mean, it's just a hopeless application in my view. And I think we should reject it outright and give a strong message that we expect better when people come to this committee with plans of this scale. Thank you.
I think I don't want to take any more comments now. I think we're ready to move to the vote. I'm going to take them in this order. One, a vote on deferral. If it is deferred, obviously that is decided for tonight's meeting. If we vote against the deferral, then I'll move to a vote on the officer's recommendation, which is approval, which we would see. But the first vote we're going to take is on deferring this to a future meeting of this committee in order to collect the evidence, the more information that Councillor Draper and others have spoken about. So can I see all those in favour of deferring this application? I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those against? I'm seeing 3 not voting. Myself. I didn't see your hand, Councillor McGrath. For deferral, sorry. So that was 6 for deferral, 3 against, and myself not voting. Those are the 10 votes of the committee. So we have decided to defer this to a future meeting to get the more information that was requested. That was item number 7. As I said on the order, we're now moving to item number 5, which is the land to the rear of 1 to 5 Archway Close in Wimbledon Park Ward again. Tim, is this you again? I can invite you to present on this application.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the application site is adjacent to Archway Close, which is a small access road coming from the right-hand side in your screen here, which goes underneath the bridge known as the railway arches, with the site outlined in red. It is adjacent to the railway land to the west, and there are some residential units to the south you can see here. The existing site, so within the application it's detailed the site is owned by Network Rail and hasn't been used for some time. I do have some pictures from the submissions which show it was subject to some serious fly tipping in 2016, but it's largely been vacant since that's been cleared. The proposal itself, this is a retrospective application. So the application follows enforcement investigation when the units were put up. In discussions with the person at the time when they're put up, he thought he was implementing permitted development rights, which is given to Network Rail. However, this is not the case for this because this is for office for not in association with Network Rail, if that makes sense. So the application is for 2 rows of modular units with some external staircase access to the top. So it's designed for small mini office units, essentially, for very small occupancy. Some of the details submitted shows 2 or 3 desks in one, for example. So it is for small units for people to rent for office use. As outlined previously, it is already has been put up. So here it is. You can see it's just pops above the wall adjacent to the main road, sited on the site. The site is covered in hard stand. It's a sort of dark grey clad modular units with glazing. Adjacent to the site to the west here is a garden serving one of the nearby residential units, and there's parking in the front. So really just showing the use of the building. There are sanitary facilities proposed on site as well. A view from on top of the bridge looking the other way. So you can see the nearest residential properties are here. And looking at adjacent to the railway land, the access way, so kind of unusual, but underneath the road, through here in terms of vehicles, and it comes through here from the industrial estate to the east. As outlined earlier in the submission, the applicants put forward some pictures showing a sort of before and after with the fly tipping. So this is 2017 showing the site before the building, which is there now. And then some fly tipping, which was in 2016, which is quite a serious amount, as you can see. Within the council's sites and policies plan, the site itself doesn't actually have any designations at all. So, although it's adjacent to the strategic industrial location to the east, it's actually not within that under our proposals map. So it's an undesignated area of brownfield land. And the proposal, although somewhat unusual as it's proposing very small office units, overall, we haven't identified planning harm with its use or with the building. Therefore, Chair, overall, officers are recommending permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have an objector down to speak on this. I'm seeing no one else in the room, so I'm assuming that Rebecca Underwood is joining us online. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, go ahead. You have 3 minutes, and I think the officer will interrupt briefly at 1 minute to go to remind you of that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening. One Railway Cottages is tucked away by the railway line. Indeed, unless you know the local area, you would be unaware that this lovely historic community of railway cottages exists. While as a family we are keen to support local regeneration, this prefab construction built without permission or consultation with neighbours and of poor quality construction not in keeping with the architecture of the surroundings has already severely harmed our residential amenity. Firstly, our property, both house and garden, now no longer feel private but are fully overlooked. The impact on our family well-being has already been detrimental due to the proximity and poor design of the upper storey. All our main windows, including family bathroom and child's bedroom, and our garden are directly overlooked from the upper storey offices and walkway. The floor-to-ceiling glass wall of the nearest office has a direct view of our garden patio. There is not an evergreen screening hedge as suggested in the planning application, and the position of the mature trees in the plan is not correct, so does not provide adequate screening. The construction is closer than legally permitted and feels like it sits higher than the surrounding buildings. Our son told us he no longer feels comfortable playing in the garden as he felt he was watched by people smoking or talking on the phones on the gangway and stairs. This impact on his well-being has been upsetting. Secondly, the positioning and luminosity of the security lighting is obtrusive and damaging to our local environment and harmful to our personal well-being. The flood lighting is not sufficiently downward facing. We can no longer comfortably walk into the garden at night as the bright lights are directly in our sightline. Whilst the lighting is said to be time controlled, it appears to remain on during the night. We are deeply concerned this will provide the opportunity for the units to be used around the clock with no regulation. Thirdly, last year ourselves, we received a planning consent for a single story extension designed after following pre-application guidance from Merton planning officers. Condition 4 of our consent prevents us from using the flat roof as a roof garden, terrace patio or similar amenity area. We would have expected that conditions applied on adjacent developments be consistent with the underlying intentions of this condition to avoid overlook. We do not feel that a 2-storey extension with gangway is at all consistent with this condition. To conclude, if the committee upholds the decision to grant permission, we would request strenuously that the following conditions are included to mitigate further harm to our well-being: to control hours of use, to improve privacy, such as opaque glass on the upper storey end windows particularly, and carefully positioned screening or planting, and to correct the angle of the intrusive floodlighting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Now, the latest update I have is that we invited the agent to speak and not been able to get hold of them. Do we know if they are here and want to take their opportunity to reply to that?
I believe they are on Zoom, Chair, yes.
Okay, great. Well, then you will have your 3 minutes to respond to that. Do we have the agent, Jeff Watkins, is the name I have. Are you there? He's in the call, it seems.
Hello.
Hello, there we
Hello.
go.
Yes.
You have 3 minutes, Jeff, to reply to what you just heard from Ms. Underwood.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm Jeff Watkins, the architect and agent for the application. The site does badly need regeneration. You've seen the abuse by fly tippers, which must not have been pleasant for adjoining owners. This use is a way of regenerating the site, which meets current popular demand for small business units, for work, and administration for small local companies. And the design is based on the sustainable use of modular containers. It was conceived to be within permitted development parameters, which is why construction did commence before an application was submitted, and why this is now a retrospective application. The parameters that were infringed were the height of the development, which is limited to 5 meters within 5 meters of a boundary. The site did rise at the back of the ground did rise at the back of the site. It turned out that the units which had been erected were slightly more than 5 meters. They are approximately 5.8 meters, but that is within 3.5 meters of the boundary, 5 meters being again the parameter. But to say the boundary, we're talking about the very tip of a very long garden, which we feel is really very remote from the actual rear of the properties. And the garden in question does have a permanent shed in the garden. And again, the greening by trees seems to us to be evergreen and dense. So we feel it's a minor infringement of permitted development rules, which is de minimis.
Sorry, was that time? No, sorry, carry on. You have
no, Chair, we've got about 45 seconds left.
Yes, we feel that, but the overall benefit to the neighbours outweighs the minor infringement. We also feel that the design is discreetly and sensitively designed. The colours and the materials are intended to be non-offensive and to be well hidden and to fit in with the site. We feel that it's a positive benefit in terms of improving the quality of the local environment and that of adjoining properties.
Okay, Mr. Watkins, thank you very much for that. First off then, we'll go back to Tim, the officer, to respond to any of the points made in those contributions.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so in relation to privacy and overlooking, with the building there in its current place, given the oblique angle that the building is at, facing slightly into the site, officers were satisfied with that angle and position in relation to the neighbouring residential unit. I'll turn members' attention to the modifications sheet, because following review of the representations, we have, in acknowledging the issues with the external lighting, the security lighting, we have actually recommended an additional condition, which not only says that no external lighting can be installed without prior authorization by the local planning authority, but condition 9, which is for them to submit details to us within 2 months, because the building's there, of the security lighting, which includes its timer for on and off, and also the angle position on the site. So we are recommending, Chair, a condition to assist with the issue of security lighting being on, as we have seen the photographs from the neighbouring resident in the evenings. Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll move it to, I have one or two myself, so I might go with my questions first and then see if any of the other committee members want. I mean, I am looking at the 3 points which the objector raised. We're saying briefly how hours, privacy and lighting. The lighting one, maybe to your satisfaction or not, has been dealt with just there. Hours of use, well, it kind of relies on the lighting as well, but I'm not sure about that one or whether we could put a condition on. The privacy one, I'm interested in the distance from, if you can see on your plans, the furthest southern tip of the block that has been built, or the proposed block, across the hedge and to the closest, the very end of number 1, railway cottages. I'm interested in what that distance is. So that's my question.
Thank you, Chair. So that distance measured on plan is 32 metres, but that does not, the plan does not take into account the single story extension which the resident referred to, which has been approved by us, which hasn't been built yet. So it is 32 metres based on that plan, but the single story extension, I know, is in that corner of number 1, so it does take it a bit closer.
And in terms of overlooking and those things, we have guidelines on, for instance, houses opposite each other on a street and how much the separation should be.
Chair, yes. So generally speaking, we look at about 20 metres between property to property when looking at, for example, new build residential on the opposite way to existing residential. So we look at around 20 metres as a sort of a reasonable.
Okay, thank you. Any other councillors with questions on this? I'm going to go Draper, Southgate, Crowe in that order. Councillor Draper, Nick.
Yeah, the business of overlooking, the objector pointed out that glass could be opaqued on the top floor. Would actually, I mean, would that actually get over the problem of overlooking in your opinion?
Well, we think based on the angular position of the building at the moment, we think it's okay. But that would be something for members to consider should that make the scheme acceptable to yourselves on this evening. Although the building is already there, there's certain methods you can do with existing glass with films that could be installed should members wish to put that condition on.
Okay, I do have to point out that the objector didn't just mention looking from the windows, but mentioned people standing out on the stairwell, smoking and talking, and which obviously you would do if the weather's nice. But we'll move on. I'll take these two together and then go back to the officers. So Southgate and then Crowe. Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, paragraph 3.2, 18 modular units, 1 unit for sanitary facilities, apart from the slightly coy language. Does that just mean 1 lavatory for the 18 offices?
And Councillor Crowe, Stephen.
My question is similar, but I was wondering about running hot and cold water and kitchen facilities for these units. I mean, are there any standards for this type of development that we should be considering?
Okay, Tim. Busily looking.
Thank you, Chair. In looking through the submission, with regard to hot water and some facilities in terms of tea and coffee and that sort of thing, I do believe that they are built within the modular units. The toilet building facilities is the new one is put in at the bottom right hand corner at ground floor level, and the application refers to some existing toilet blocks on the site, which I believe are historic, and I imagine that the state of them inside probably not that great. So they have provided a new facility in the bottom right-hand corner unit, which is the one nearest the road arches.
Okay, any other questions from members? Okay, I'll throw it open to comments. In that order, we'll go Southgate, Alan Baritas. So Peter first.
Yes, thank you. Well, just in an homage to the late great Sir Richard Rogers, of course, who built that house for his mum using largely industrial units. I think this, it's innovative and inexpensive, and it's there. So really, what we're about here, I think, is trying to deal with the concerns raised by Rebecca. Forgive the informality, Rebecca. To mitigate what she perceives as the harm. And I'm actually quite heartened by the extent to which those have been addressed. The use of frosted or opaque glass might be worth considering further. But yeah, in terms of total separation distance, frankly, I think that there's not too much to to complain about there, is there actually? I mean, across the street, living room to living room could be little more than 20 metres. So I'm generally satisfied if we can pursue those suggested conditions and improvements.
Okay, Councillor Alan Bridges.
Yeah, agree with Southgate.
Thank you. There being no, Councillor Henry, Joan.
I'm sorry, Chair. Maybe I should have asked this before, but I haven't seen any area for the waste for bins or anything. Is there? Oh, sorry, maybe I missed it.
Tim, if you could take that.
That is actually proposed at the entrance on my pictures with the gate under the arch at the front, because of the archway, so it's reduced in height. That's the best place for it.
Okay. There is a suggestion that on the rectangular block, the only place where it would be needed would be the sort of southwest facing edge, which is facing directly towards One Railway Cottages. Are we able to condition that just on the first floor of just the one side of the building that those windows have some sort of treatment to make them opaque? And it wouldn't have to be from floor to ceiling, would it? It would have to be up to normal eye height, but a way that people sitting at their desk in that office couldn't look straight down into the garden, which albeit is 30 odd metres away. Can that be conditioned?
It can, Chair, yes. We normally is 1.7 metres from internal finished floor level as a height guideline. So
yeah, so that would be above the height of other than a very, very tall person. So you could still have direct sunlight coming in above that, but opaque below that. So with that change to the conditions, the recommendation is grant planning permission. I'm going to put that to the vote. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 in favour, no not voting, none against, me not voting. That's the 10 votes. So that is decided in favour with that extra condition. We'll move on now to agenda item number 6. Okay, agenda item 6 is 94 Cottenham Park Road in West Wimbledon, demolition of existing garage and erection of a 3-bedroom detached dwelling house. Who is presenting on this? You again, Tim. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the application site is sited to the west of Cranford Close and off Cottenham Park Road. The site is somewhat a little bit unusual, as it is land that is associated with number 1 Cranford Close to the east, which I'm circulating here. Most of the site is actually laid to grass with natural earth underneath, but the site also incorporates 1 garage space out of these long row of garages here, which that garage space also is linked to number 1. So that is the site. The proposal itself is for a 3-bed detached dwelling house. The proposal would demolish the 1 existing garage and be sited hard up against the boundary of the remaining garages beyond. You will note here, this is the proposed block plan. So in terms of allowing for the demolition of that garage, the building does therefore retain the building line within the road. The proposed house itself, although with use of traditional materials, is a somewhat contemporary approach. So at the front, it would have a long sweeping roof, which would have a large area for solar panels, 9 in total, which would be directly facing south, along with a small roof terrace. And at ground floor level, completely open plan living with bedrooms 1st and 2nd floor. So the proposal is here. So at the front here, so it's a brick and tile dwelling with some mock wood cladding to the front. To the sides, you have some tall windows on the eastern side, none on this side, a small one here. and a small window overlooking the garages at the rear. In terms of height, it would be taller than the adjacent development to the west, but lower in height than the houses ridge height to the east. So this 3D image gives it probably better in terms of seeing what the dwelling would be like. As I said, brick and tile, access to the side. There would be space for one car parking space here or within the land ownership. Very small rear terrace proposed with, again, garden. Later lawn would remain as is. A section through really helping to show you the roof terrace at the front. Some further 3D visuals to assist, looking west of the site there, and then looking directly in front. The site pictures itself. So the idea with the application is that the boundary treatment will remain largely as is, albeit better maintained. But in order to formally secure this, we put a condition on for boundary treatment because it is actually hedgerow at the moment. The tree there, as a verbal update, there's now been made a tree preservation order by our council's tree officer to ensure its long-term protection. This is the existing access. And further down on Cottenham Park Road, the site here. And then looking the other way with the site here. So you can see the garage here, which would be removed. So the space gained here. As I said, the height wouldn't exceed that, but it would exceed this. Opposite are 3-story traditional houses with some, because they're flats, some of them have lots of front gardens with high fencing, which is probably why the high fencing is there in the street. Just from the other access to the west, which is unaffected by this. As I said, the grass on site, the garage to be removed. And then looking west here. Overall, Chair, although the land associated with another house, it's not actually linked in a good way. So there's no loss of real garden space here for the existing property. The garage to be lost. The existing house has a drop curb, Cranford Close, which can provide space for 2 cars for that family home. So overall, officers are satisfied the house can be accommodated on site and recommend permission be granted. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that. There are no speakers on this item, so any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Allen-Brutus, Stephen.
We just move to a vote, Chair.
Anybody against that proposal? Anything particularly they want to say? Okay, we will move to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Again, that's 9, none against. Me not voting makes the 10 on the committee. Okay, thank you for that. We continue with our agenda. I have to interrupt. That was agenda item 9. I'm adding in agenda item 9A, which is just to explain to you, officers split the borough into 2 sections, north and south, and all of the applications this evening were in the north section. So our esteemed officer, Jonathan Lewis, wasn't needed this evening as he covers the south area, which is unfortunate because by the time of our next meeting, he will have retired. So I would like all the members of the committee to instruct me to write a very kind email thanking him for all his work for the borough over the years. Thank you very much. The rest of the agenda item 10, planning appeal decisions, a report to be noted. Agenda item 11, planning enforcement, summary of current cases to be noted. That concludes our meeting. Thank you very much for coming and everyone watching at home, and we will see you